Chapter 2040. The golden dragon hovered in the air and looked down at Chu Li, feeling his changes. It was very curious about Chu Li's secret skill and wanted to see how he could ripen the sky dragon fruit, to see if Chu Li was bragging. If so, even if he was a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, he would not be courteous. He would be buried here, and his soul would not be able to leave. After a while, it suddenly floated back and stopped 100 meters away. It felt the power of age and the passage of time. The energy of time was one of the strongest energies in the world. It was invisible, traceless, and extremely difficult to detect. It killed without leaving a trace. Even though it was slow, it was unavoidable. Once it was sped up, its might could shake the heavens and the earth and obliterate the world. There was no eternity in the world. Nothing could escape the attack of the power of age. Chu Li had mastered it. It was terrifying. Even if he had to pay the price of burning his lifespan, it would be worth it if he could use it well. It looked at Chu Li with a solemn gaze and no longer looked down on him. The sky dragon tree did not change, but the sky dragon fruit did. Its color changed from white to green, then to red, then to purple, and finally to gold. The golden dragon could only watch helplessly as it underwent such a drastic change in just a few short days. A few days was just a short time in its eyes. It thought it was magical. Of course, Chu Li also changed along with the color of the sky dragon fruit. His hair changed from black to gray, then white, then to snow white. He changed from a young man to an old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion. The golden sky dragon fruit started to shine brighter and brighter, turning from gold to white. Its light was like the sun rising from morning to noon. The changes after that matched the setting sun. The sky dragon fruit's light became red, then rose red, and finally disappeared. The sky dragon fruit turned dark gold. When there was no more light, they floated away from the sky dragon tree and landed on the ground silently like feathers. They were as light as feathers, but were not blown away by the howling wind. They landed firmly on the ground. The golden dragon beckoned with one of its claws, and a golden fruit immediately flew up and floated into its claw. Chu Li opened his eyes and golden light shot out. The golden dragon said, "What an amazing art of time." Chu Li reached out and picked up the dark golden fruit. It was as smooth as jade and as light as a feather. If he did not feel its warmth in his hand, he would have thought that it did not exist. The golden dragon said, "After consuming this, you will sleep for 10 years. When you wake up, you will become a golden dragon." Chu Li nodded slowly. The golden dragon sized him up and said, 10 years. Don't you feel disappointed? 10 years isn't that long, right? Chu Li asked. This time, the golden dragon finally believed Chu Li's words a little. It was true that he was not being utilitarian. He was only doing this for his companions. This made it accept Chu Li a little. Once again, it said in Chu Li's mind, "Take the dragon's seal. This time, I've gotten your sky dragon fruit, so I owe you a favor. With this dragon seal, anyone can come here. I'll help you once, even if I have to go to the outland to kill." Chu Li did not stand on ceremony and gave a fist salute. "Thank you. Come up," said the golden dragon. Chu Li glided away from the cliff. After he sat on the golden dragon, he glanced at the sky dragon tree and suppressed the thought of breaking a branch. He realized that the environment in which the sky dragon tree grew was extremely harsh. It was born from the essence of a dragon. Without the essence of a dragon, it was impossible for it to survive. Even the life and death scripture was useless. The golden dragon suddenly sped up. Suddenly, the feeling of being crushed by a mountain came again. After a while, it disappeared and they returned to the vast sea. Chu Li floated into the air and gave a fist salute. "Senior, I'll take my leave then. Go." The golden dragon leaped down and immediately dived into the sea and disappeared. Chu Li stood in the void and looked at the sea. He shook his head and suddenly appeared at the 100,000 Hills ice pool. He had already changed back to his original appearance. With a thought, after a quarter of an hour, the purple dragon appeared in front of him. Chu Li tossed the sky dragon fruit to it and let it eat it. The purple dragon did not ask any questions and immediately swallowed the sky dragon fruit. Before it could say a few words, It had already fallen into a deep sleep in the ice pool. The black spirit tortoise floated in the air and nodded knowingly. It knew that it had to stand guard here and then dived into the ice pool. Chuli did not wait for the little vermilion bird to find him and suddenly disappeared. On a lingering drizzle, Chuli returned to his residence in Drizzle City. Chuli knew why this place was called Drizzle City, because this kind of lingering drizzle was very common. The weather was like this for half a year. As soon as he returned to his residence, when he came over, the two sat in a gazebo in the backyard and chatted while admiring the rain. "Congratulations, Brother Chu." When he put down his teacup and smiled. "You've mastered the heavenly scroll of indifference." Chuli said, "I was just lucky. It was a flash of inspiration. This is an opportunity." When he said, "Also, I have to congratulate Brother Chu for becoming the 9th Princess Inner Protector." Chuli was stunned. "Inner Protector?" When he said, "This is a position that many brothers in front of the palace want, but has fallen into your hands, Brother Chu." Chuli shook his head. "I wonder what's going on with this Inner Protector. From today onwards, you don't have to go to the front of the palace anymore. You could go directly to the 9th Princess residence." One E said, "The Inner Scribe is the 9th Princess personal protector. They are on duty in the 9th Princess residence. Once the 9th Princess goes out, they will be the protector in the innermost circle guarding the last checkpoint." Chuli slowly nodded. "I'm indebted to the 9th Princess for thinking so highly of me." He knew what Shueluoyu was thinking. She was actively trying to win him over and use his strength to become the hall leader. Although this path was difficult, it was rewarding. It was more reliable than becoming the hall leader himself. When he smiled, the 9th Princess was very perceptive. She brought Brother Chu to participate in the indifferent sword meet. Otherwise, Brother Chu wouldn't have mastered the heavenly scroll of indifference. "It's a good story." Chuli nodded. Through this incident, he had completely become Shueluoyu's man. Without a doubt, everyone would think that Shueluoyu had recognized him. One E said, "The 9th Princess is wise and capable. She may become the hall leader." Chuli raised his eyebrows and smiled. It seemed that when E was also one of Shueluoyu's supporters. When he looked at his smile and knew that he understood what he meant, the two of them were on the same side. Chuli asked, "Brother One, after I become the 9th Princess's protector, will I still go to the foreign battlefield?" When he smiled, "If the 9th Princess goes, Brother Chu will go too. If she doesn't, Brother Chu can't just leave her and go alone, right?" Chuli smiled bitterly. When he took a sip of tea, looked at the drizzle outside, and slowly said, "If the 9th Princess wants to achieve her goal, she needs enough merit points, and the foreign battlefields are the best place to do so. Brother Chu, you don't need to worry. There will be a chance to kill Azura." The hatred between Chu Li and the Azura was known to everyone in the Rainmaster Palace. Chuli smiled. One E said, "Brother Chu, although the 9th Princess is a woman, her passion is not inferior to a man's. Moreover, the 9th Princess's temper is, in short, you must be careful and not offend her. Otherwise," he shook his head as he spoke. Chuli fist saluted. "Thank you, Brother Wen." When he smiled, "We won't be strangers in the future. It's only right to help each other. Brother One, do you have a chance to become an inner protector?" Chuli asked. When he shook his head, "The 9th Princess usually chooses female protectors. Brother Chu, you're the only male protector." Chapter 2041. Chuli took a sip of his tea thoughtfully. This was not a good job. He really did not want to do it. Being a protector seemed to have a higher status. As the 9th Princess's protector, his status rose. It was like a dog relying on its master's power. It could be said to be a third-rank official in front of the Prime Minister, but it was not as good as being a disciple of the Front Minister. In the Front Minister, as long as one made enough contributions, one could be promoted. With the accumulation of contributions, one could reach the level of Lord Jun, or the commander of the Front Minister would use a scheme to kill him, or he would be promoted. According to his observation, the commander was not that ruthless. It was different to be the 9th Princess's protector. Everyone had a few faces. Shueluoyu had one face when she participated in the Sword of Oblivion conference with him. After he became her protector, he would have another face. He needed to listen to her orders. Although he started as an unranked protector, he was not used to people telling him what to do. However, this was the ninth princess' good intention. He had to accept it. He could only sigh at the helplessness of life. No matter how strong his martial arts was, he could not be completely free. If he wanted to control the Rainmaster's Hall, he could only be a good protector and support the ninth princess. When he smiled, "Brother Chu, you have the ninth princess's trust. This is something to be congratulated for." Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "There is a male protector among the inner protectors. Isn't the ninth princess afraid of others gossiping?" "Gossiping?" When Yi was startled and then laughed. "Brother Chu, you're thinking too much. What kind of gossip would the protectors have with the ninth princess?" Chu Li said, "Men and women always have to avoid suspicion." "Ha! Brother Chu, you're really interesting." When he chuckled and said, the heavens upon heavens, are all about matching families. Everyone is different. The ninth princess will never see us as men. She will only see us as bodyguards. Don't think too much about this." Chu Li nodded slowly. The Outland and the Lower Realm did have some differences in views. It was more conservative. Protectors and masters could never be together. Unlike the Lower Realm, although there was a difference in social class, because martial arts were respected, the social class was not as solid. The fact that an unranked scribe like him was able to marry the third lady of the House of High Dukes was proof enough. However, this kind of thing would never happen in the Outland, so he should not dream of having a romantic relationship with the ninth princess. The ninth princess would never have thought of this. Chu Li said, "Oh right, why does the ninth princess only want me as a male protector? It's still too little. Some things are more convenient for men to do. I'll suggest to the ninth princess to find a few more male protectors, like Brother Wen." When he hurriedly waved his hand, "Please don't." Chu Li looked at him in confusion. He could see Wen Yi's envy. He also wanted to be the ninth princess's bodyguard, so why was he so eager to refuse? Wen Yi sighed, "Brother Chu, if you mention it, I'm afraid I won't have any hope of becoming the ninth princess bodyguard. Right now, the ninth princess often asks the front palace department for people to be her outer guards, and I'm often ordered to protect her." "I see." Chu Li was enlightened. He could tell at once that Wen Yi was not envious of him becoming an inner guard, but rather admired the ninth princess. However, it was no wonder. The ninth princess was indeed very beautiful. Coupled with her high status and high martial arts skills, she was indeed very popular. Wen Yi said, "Brother Chu, I can't thank you enough for protecting the ninth princess." Chu Li smiled. "Don't worry, Brother Wen." The next morning, the drizzle had stopped. The sky was clear, and the sun was shining brightly. After breakfast, he left Drizzle City and went to the Rainmaster Palace. He came to an ordinary house in the south of the city and knocked on the door. There were no protectors in front of the house, only two lifelike stone beasts. He did not recognize these stone beasts, but they looked more ferocious than lions. The side door was quickly pulled open, and a middle-aged man came out and closed fist saluted. Chu Li closed fist saluted. "I'm Protector Chu Li from the Front Palace Department, reporting to the ninth princess." He could tell that this middle-aged man was a supreme master. A gatekeeper was also a supreme master. Supreme masters were too worthless. It seemed that the Rainmaster Palace master was very concerned about his daughter's safety, or else he would not waste such a talent. The middle-aged man said slowly, "The lady has instructed. Please come in. The lady is waiting for you in the backyard. Follow me." Chu Li nodded and followed him inside. After passing through 4 courtyards, they came to the backyard and saw the ninth princess, Shui Liu, on a lake. Shui Liu was dressed in an emerald green gown, and her head was lowered as she played the guzheng. The sound of the guzheng was faint, with a hint of murderous intent. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and stepped into the winding corridor. After a few turns, he came to a gazebo and stood in front of her. "Zheng!" The sound of the guzheng stopped. Shui Liu put down her snow-white hand and looked up at Chu Li. Her bright eyes were like ice as she looked at him quietly. Chu Li closed fist saluted. "Greetings, ninth princess. No need for formalities." Yu waved her hand and pointed opposite her. Chu shook his head and smiled. I can stand and talk. Sit. Yu scoffed. Chu smiled and sat opposite her. Yu looked at him and nodded. I haven't seen you for a while. It seems like your comprehension of the heavenly book of indifference is going well. Chu smiled. I left rashly last time and failed to protect the ninth princess. I failed in my duty. Yu waved her hand. I only needed to teleport back, and I didn't need your protection. Did you go to the great light, surpassing land with Lady Sun? Yes, Chu replied. Yu chuckled. Protector Chu, you have to work hard too. Don't be forced to separate from Sun Mingyue because you're not worthy of her. Chu smiled and nodded. Once Sun Mingyue became the master of the great light, surpassing land, his identity would be unworthy of her. Even if no one forced them to separate, the pressure of the secular world would be a great force. It's easy being my protector, Yu said. I don't usually go out. Chu nodded. Yu said, but I have to tell you the rules in advance. You only need to protect me and listen to everything else. Chu nodded seriously. He knew that Yu would change her attitude. Yu said, also, once you become my protector, you'll only listen to me. You can't follow anyone else's orders, including the commander and the deputy temple master. Chu pondered for a moment and nodded slowly. Don't worry, lady. Very well. Yu nodded and said with satisfaction, Chu, you're an extremely smart person. I don't think I need to explain the rest. Chu fist saluted, got up, and took a step back to stand opposite her. Yu's eyes sparkled. She smiled and lowered her head to continue playing the guzheng. Chu was calm, and his aura gradually weakened. Eventually, he blended in with his surroundings and was almost undetectable. Yu felt this abnormality and was more satisfied with Chu. She had thought carefully about how to use Chu. Chu was a treasured sword, but she needed to think about how to use it to its fullest potential. Chu was not a bad person, but he could not escape from human nature. He still had to abide by his duty. He was a protector, not her friend. Chu was not dissatisfied with Yu. It was just the thinking of superior. Even if his martial arts were better than hers, his status was far inferior. They were not friends, but superiors and subordinates. Chapter 2042. He stood motionless in the gazebo. A gust of cool breeze blew past, sweeping across the clear ripples on the surface of the lake. It brought a moist air into the gazebo, gently caressing his face. His white robe fluttered as he pondered. Yu valued him, but she was also afraid that he would manipulate her. She did not have enough confidence in herself, which was why she did this. Her political tactics were too immature. Compared to Sun Mingyue and Lu Yurong, it was like the difference between a 3-year-old and an adult. It would be difficult for her to win the position of temple leader with such tactics. As she gained experience, her tactics would become more sophisticated, but it would be difficult for her to reach the level of Sun Mingyue and Lu Yurong. This was also due to the difference in talent and environment. Environment was only one aspect, talent was still fundamental. Yu was smart, but she could not reach the level of Sun Mingyue and Lu Yurong. However, this would make it easier for him to manipulate her secretly to achieve his goal. It would be difficult for Yu to become temple leader by herself. Yu continued to play the guzheng, the sound of which was filled with murderous intent. Chu pretended not to hear it and remained motionless like a wooden stake. His performance satisfied Yu. She wanted to put Chu in an important position, but she needed to let him understand the difference in status so that he would not have any improper thoughts, lest he caused endless trouble. Her father once taught her to pay special attention to the people around her. The people around her were often the deadliest to her. Once someone close to her betrayed her, it would hurt her the most. If Chu had improper thoughts, and she did not agree, love would inevitably turn into hate, which would cause endless trouble. However, he couldn't just not use him because he was a rare talent. It would be a sin if he couldn't make use of such a talent. Chu used his clairvoyance, but could not see into her heart. She had a treasure to protect herself. He had used the omniscient mirror for a long time. Even without the mirror, He could see into her heart through subtle expressions. However, she covered her face with a white veil, so he could not see into her heart through subtle expressions. He needed enough time to familiarize himself with her. After some time, Chuli could see into her heart just by looking at her eyes. Zheng. The sound of the gouging stopped. Shueluyu looked up at him. Chuli stared into the distance without moving, as if he did not sense her gaze. Chuli, I want to kill someone, Shueluyu said. Chuli asked, who does Lady Xiao want to kill? Vice Hall Master Qian Chengwang. Shueluyu said slowly. Chuli raised his eyebrows. Ministry of Electricity? Shueluyu gently nodded and said, what's wrong? Are you afraid? Chuli said, if it's a deputy temple leader, his cultivation level is extremely high. Are you confident, my lady? No. Shueluyu shook her head and sighed. Qian Chengwang's martial arts and contributions are amazing for him to become a deputy temple master. Chuli raised his eyebrows. I found out that Qian Chengwang killed my second brother, sighed Shueluyu. That's impossible, right? Chuli frowned. If it really was Deputy Palace Leader Qian, why didn't the palace leader make a move? Shueluyu shook her head and said, Father is busy with the heavenly demon and the great Azura, so he has no time to get involved. I don't want to bother him. I want to avenge second brother. Second young master didn't die in the extraterritorial battlefield? Chuli frowned. Shueluyu coldly said, he was killed by Qian Chengwang's plot in the extraterritorial battlefield. Is there any evidence? Chuli asked. No. Shueluyu slowly shook her head. Chuli remained silent. Shueluyu coldly said, if I go, can you help me? Chuli said, if my lady wants to go, I'll have to protect her, but this matter can't be rushed. We need to proceed with caution. Can you get Deputy Palace Leader Qian's belongings? Yes. Shueluyu's bright eyes flashed as she carefully stared at him. Chuli smiled. I know a little about the sky-piercing heart technique, so I can predict the future. You didn't cripple your skills? Shueluyu was surprised. Didn't Zhao Haiyuan force you to cripple it? I can cultivate again even if I'm crippled, Chuli said. Shueluyu's bright eyes flashed, and she chuckled. I didn't expect you to be so brave. Chuli said, if I encounter anything from the heaven-shaking tower, I'll cripple it. If I don't, I'll continue cultivating. It'll be easy to cultivate again. I only need Deputy Palace Leader Qian's belongings? Shueluyu asked. Chuli said, it'll be better if you have second young masters. All right, I'll give it to you tomorrow. Shueluyu nodded. You can go back for now. Come over during the day and go back to rest at night. Chuli nodded and did not ask any more questions. He fist saluted and left. Shueluyu watched as his silhouette gradually disappeared, frowning in silence. She got up and paced back and forth with her hands behind her back, thinking about Chu Li's words and actions, trying to figure out his intentions. Chu Li's previous behavior made her feel relieved, but also inexplicably disappointed. It seemed that Chu Li did not have any improper thoughts about her, which saved her a lot of trouble. After all, she was very proud of her beauty, and there were not many men in the world who could stay calm when faced with her beauty. She understood that Chu Li was not tempted because of Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue's beauty was unparalleled, not inferior to hers. Both of them were in love, so it was understandable that he was not tempted. However, he obviously did not agree with her assassinating Qian Chengwang. As for his heavenly heart technique, it was a pleasant surprise. She did not expect him to be so bold as to cultivate again. Although it was a taboo of the heaven-shaking pavilion, it was extremely useful, even more important than his martial arts. She felt that she had picked up a treasure, and she had to make good use of it. The next morning, Chuli left Drizzle City after breakfast and went to the Rainmaster's Hall. When he arrived at the 9th princess's residence, he was immediately let in. He followed a small path through the 4 courtyards to the backyard, and went to the gazebo on the lake to see Shueluyu. Shueluyu had already taken off her white veil, revealing her beautiful face. She was sitting in the gazebo with a gloomy face, staring at the 2 jade pendants on the stone table. Chuli approached her and fist saluted. My lady, these are the pendants that second brother and Qian Chengwang always carry around. Yu pointed at the stone table. Chu Li nodded. Can you get Qian Chengwang's pendant too? If that was the case, he really had to admire Yu's remarkable abilities. This pendant is broken, Yu said, so he threw it away. Chu Li nodded in realization. Let me take a look. You could try. Yu extended her hand and gestured for him to sit. Chu Li sat opposite her and reached out his hand to touch one of the pendants. After a while, he reached for the other one. After a while, he let go and pondered. Chu Li frowned and did not say anything. Yu did not rush him. She stared at him with her clear eyes without blinking. After a long while, Chu Li sighed and shook his head. Did you find anything? Yu asked. Chu Li sighed. My lady, you might be disappointed. Tell me, Yu said. Chu Li said, Second young master was not killed by deputy leader Qian, but by the heavenly demon. Impossible, Yu said. Chu Li shook his head. Second young master was killed by the heavenly demon. Someone saw it with their own eyes that it was Qian Chengwang who killed him. Yu frowned and stared at him in disbelief. Chu Li said, it was the heavenly demon who disguised himself as deputy leader Qian and killed him. Chapter 2043. Chu Li sighed. Of course, because the second young master and deputy leader Qian are wearing treasures that hide them from the heavens, it's not that clear. I can only vaguely deduce it. I can't guarantee that it's 100% accurate. Yu's expression changed slightly, but she remained silent. She had spent a lot of effort to find out who her second brother's enemy was, but this was the result. She was wrong. It was not Qian Chengwang who killed him, but the heavenly demon who framed him. If she acted rashly, she might really become a fool and a laughingstock, which would be what the heavenly demon wanted. However, she subconsciously refused to accept it. What if Chu Li was wrong? The two jade pendants on the table were broken. One was cut off by a knife, and the other was hit with a broken corner. Chu Li pointed at the jade pendant that had a corner knocked off and sighed. If I'm not mistaken, this deputy palace leader Qian is currently in the outer boundary battleground. Moreover, he's met with a life-or-death crisis. Yu frowned as she stared at the jade pendant on the table. Chu Li accurately pointed out which jade pendant belonged to Qian Chengwang. Yu was sure that he had recultivated the heavenly heart technique. Chu Li said, even if deputy leader Qian is the murderer of the second young master, you don't have to do it yourself. He probably won't make it through this time. He's the deputy leader, Yu said slowly. Chu Li said, even the leader was heavily injured, let alone the deputy leader. That's true. Yu nodded. Her father was severely injured and almost lost his life. If the deputy leader was the leader of that operation, he would have died without a doubt. Shall we wait and see? Yu stared at him. Chu Li shook his head. It's up to you, lady. I'll only say what I know. I don't dare to interfere with your decision. Let's wait and see. Yu nodded in satisfaction. If Chu Li were to point fingers at her now, she would definitely make him understand the difference between him and her and what his identity was. What made her feel relaxed and happy was that Chu Li knew his limits. It was rare that he did not become arrogant despite his martial arts. For the rest of the time, Chu Li returned to his original position. He stood motionless at the side and secretly deduced and comprehended the scroll of indifference. His comprehension of the unruffled heavenly book was merely superficial and far from reaching true comprehension. The heavenly book of indifference was profound and unfathomable. The more he comprehended it, the more he felt it to be exquisite. The sword of indifference above his head became more and more flexible, and it had many unimaginable uses. The size manipulation was only the most basic. It could also change its shape, turning into a thin thread, a long knife, or even a long spear or a thick stick. It was truly unpredictable and formless. Yu stayed in the back garden for a day. After playing the zither, she began to practice kung fu. Then she read, played the zither, and practiced kung fu again. She spent almost all her time practicing kung fu and reading. She only adjusted her mood by playing the zither. Chu Li admired her hard work and self-discipline, as expected of someone with great ambitions. On the morning of the fourth day, Chu Li arrived at the backyard of the ninth princess residence in the drizzle. He stood in the gazebo and listened to Shui Liu play the guzheng. Shui Liu was no longer wearing her veil in front of him. She played the zither with her bare hands, and the sound of the zither was leisurely. After a while, the sound of the zither stopped. Shui Liu was dressed in a light yellow gown. Her face was bright and flawless, as if she was carved out of white jade. She looked at the drizzling lake and sighed. I received news today that Xian Chengwang has been rescued. Chu Li said, looks like he's lucky. He's the deputy temple leader, after all. Heaven's Shaking Brothel also predicted that he would be in trouble. They brought a few supreme masters into the extraterrestrial battlefield as reinforcements and rescued him. Shui Liu scoffed. If it wasn't for Heaven's Shaking Brothel, he would have died. I heard that he was ambushed by a few great Azuras. She stared at Chu Li with her bright eyes. She no longer doubted his Tianxin technique. Chu Li said, the Azuras are getting more and more arrogant these days. There's Heaven's Shaking Brothel. Shui Liu slapped the white jade railing. Looks like we won't be able to avenge second brother. Chu Li said, second young master died at the hands of the heavenly demon. The only way to avenge him is to kill the heavenly demon. Shui Liu gritted her teeth and gripped the white jade railing tightly. Her jade-like hands subconsciously sank deeper into the railing. She said helplessly, the heavenly demon is far away. We won't be able to find him even if we go to the extraterrestrial battlefield. We won't have a chance to avenge him. Chu Li said, according to my calculations, the heavenly demon is in the outland. Shui Liu turned and stared at him. Chu Li nodded. He didn't go far. He's in our territory. Can we really find him? Shui Liu took a deep breath. She did not blink. Chu Li said, it's not difficult to find him, but it's troublesome to deal with him. He must be a powerful master. We might not be able to defeat him. I'll think of a way. You just need to help me find the heavenly demon. Shui Liu said, Chu Li, if you can really find the heavenly demon who killed second brother, I'll give you a rank 1 merit. Chu Li fist saluted. Don't worry, lady. I'll try my best. Shui Liu nodded. She hurriedly got up and walked out. Chu Li followed closely behind and stopped in front of her courtyard in the inner courtyard. He guarded the courtyard door and did not enter. After all, men and women were separated. Only maids were allowed to enter her courtyard. After Shui Liu entered the inner courtyard, 2 maids hurried out. Their pretty faces were tense as they went out to pass on orders. After an hour, Shui Liu came out again. This time, she had changed into a dress as white as snow. Her face was covered with a white veil, revealing only her bright eyes. When she left the courtyard, she nodded at Chu Li and gracefully went to the front courtyard. There were already 6 supreme masters in the front courtyard. When Yi was among them, she nodded at him. Chu Li knew that these 6 supreme grade masters were her trusted subordinates. They could follow her orders without asking for a reason. Shui Liu said, we're going to deal with a heavenly demon. Everyone, be careful. Everyone silently fist saluted with determined expressions. Chu Li glanced at them. Among the 6 supreme masters, 2 were young men and 4 were middle-aged. The 2 young men looked at him with admiration. The 4 middle-aged men looked calm and composed. Shui Liu took out 8 jade pearls. They were the size of longans and were made of white jade. They were warm and white, exuding a watery luster. She gently tossed the 7 jade pearls to Chu Li and the others. Chu Li caught them and immediately felt the presence of the other 7 people. It was a strange feeling. He looked as if he was used to it. Chu Li, lead the way, Shui Liu said. Chu Li nodded. He suddenly disappeared in front of the 7 people. Then, they disappeared separately. The 8 jade pearls connected their senses, so all 8 of them appeared at the peak of a mountain. Looking around, it was a vast expanse of whiteness. Only the heavy snow was still falling. Where is this? A middle-aged man asked. Chu Li shook his head and pointed to the north. The heavenly demon is 2 miles away. Let's go and have a look, Shui Liu said. They were all wearing light clothes. If it were not for their strong inner energy and protective vigor, they would have been frozen. Chu Li glided to the north. The others followed closely behind. Soon, a huge city appeared in front of them. It was 1/5 the size of Rainmaster City. Although it was snowing, the city was still very lively. Children ran out to have snowball fights, and laughter could be heard. Chu Li and the others quietly entered the city and arrived in front of a luxurious and majestic mansion. Chapter 2044. The heavy snowflakes fell on the 8 of them, but were blocked by an invisible force an inch away. They slid silently to their feet and soon piled up to their ankles. Chu Li pointed at the residence opposite. He lives here. Shuelu extended her hand out of her sleeve. A string of prayer beads was worn on her snow-white wrist. It was plain and lusterless, but there was a Buddhist sarira hidden in it. It blended in with the other prayer beads and was difficult to distinguish. Now, Chu Li was not afraid of this secret skill to distinguish heavenly demons. He realized that his heavenly demon scripture was different from the heavenly demons from the outside world. Heavenly demons from the outside world were also formless, but the force that they cultivated was completely different from the heavenly demon scripture. The heavenly demon scripture relied entirely on the heavenly demonic orb. All the cultivation was contained in the heavenly demonic orb. The heavenly demonic orb could turn into an illusion with a single thought. However, these heavenly demons did not seem to have the heavenly demonic orb. They cultivated the heavenly demonic energy, which was extremely powerful. Compared to the powerful physical body of the heavenly demonic orb, the heavenly demonic energy was similar to inner energy. However, it was more powerful and mysterious. It could be used directly on flesh and blood, allowing the body to change at will. Moreover, it was impossible to distinguish the real from the fake. He speculated that the two came from the same source but had different cultivation paths. The courtyard is so big. How do we know who it is? When he asked in a low voice, Chu Li extended his hand. My lady, where's the jade pendant? Shuelu took out a jade pendant from her sleeve and handed it to him. Chu Li took it and squinted for a moment. When he opened his eyes, he said, I'll take the lead and lure him out. Everyone, hide well and act according to the situation. My lady will then use the secret method to make him reveal his true identity. Okay, Shuelu nodded. Even if she did not want to listen to Chu Li, she had to do so under such circumstances. Chu Li floated up and broke through the curtains formed by the heavy snowflakes. He entered the mansion. Bang, 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 bang. Several muffled sounds broke the silence. Chu Li shot out of the courtyard wall like a gust of wind and escaped into the distance. A middle-aged man in gray was hot on his heels. His appearance was ordinary, but his hands were as thick as a cattail leaf fan, twice the size of a normal person's hands. His body moved like lightning, and in the blink of an eye, he caught up to Chu Li's back and struck out with his right palm. Chu Li turned his head and countered with his palm. Bang! Another muffled sound was heard, and Chu Li shot into the distance like an arrow. Where do you think you're going? The gray-robed, middle-aged man sneered and chased after him. After Chu Li had shot out 200 meters, he abruptly turned around and changed his direction from north to west. Along the way, he once again received a palm energy from the middle-aged man in gray and arrived at the place where Shuelu and the others were hiding. Like a white crane, Shuelu flew up into the sky and threw a palm strike in the vast white snow. The Buddha beads on her wrist flashed with golden light. The palm energy was soundless, and like a gust of wind, it turned into a ray of light that fell on the gray-clothed middle-aged man, catching him off guard. His body suddenly shook, and then the black fog spread out, surrounding him. It really is a heavenly demon. Shuelu snorted. When E and the other 5 surrounded him like ghosts. Their palms and fists collided with each other, attacking fiercely like a storm. They were all transcendent grade, and their fists and palms were shockingly powerful. However, the gray-clothed middle-aged man moved like a ghost, dodging 7 or 8 out of 10 attacks. His body was like a snowflake falling from the sky, moving with the wind and unable to be defeated. Chu Li stood at the periphery, watching the 6 people attack wildly. He frowned and said, We have to take him down as soon as possible, in case there are helpers. Shuelayu said, You should go up too. Chu Li said, I'll protect Lady CEO. He looked around and did not join in, guarding against a sneak attack on Shuelayu. Although Shuelayu was a transcendent grade and had sharp instincts, there was always a chance. Shuelayu shook her head and said nothing. This clearly showed the difference between one E and the others and Chu Li. They only cared about fighting the heavenly demon and wanted to take it down, but they did not care about her safety. On the other hand, Chu Li did not regard taking down the heavenly demon as the most important thing. Instead, he prioritized protecting her. As Shuelayu thought about this, she lightly struck out with her palm, and a clear light shrouded the gray-clothed middle-aged man. However, the gray-clothed middle-aged man's instincts were amazing, and he actually sensed the boundless palm energy. At the crucial moment, he suddenly dodged, and the clear light missed. Shuelayu frowned and joined in the frenzy of the 6 people. Chu Li's body did not move, but the Sword of Oblivion was activated. Bang, 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 bang. The gray-clothed middle-aged man's body suddenly staggered, and black light flashed on his body. He was hit by an invisible force and could not stand steadily. It was the Sword of Oblivion that turned into a long knife and slashed. Shuelayu and the others took the opportunity to attack him. After the gray-clothed middle-aged man was stunned, his aura suddenly skyrocketed, and his cultivation level suddenly increased by 5 times. The 7 people who were initially evenly matched with him were suddenly flustered. However, the 7 people cooperated well and soon gained the upper hand. Chu Li suddenly shouted, Reinforcements are here. As soon as he finished speaking, a long whistle was heard from afar. The whistle was melodious and pleasant, and it traveled very far. It did not sound murderous, but only the joy of meeting a good friend. Chu Li shouted, Quick! When Shuelayu and the others heard the whistle, the gray-clothed middle-aged man heard it too. He suddenly became alert, and his cultivation level seemed to increase by a notch. He was instantly suppressed, and he took the opportunity to escape. Chu Li and the others hurriedly chased after him. But the heavenly demonic energy was originally based on speed and strangeness, and a light body technique would double its speed. Moreover, it was in the middle of a violent secret skill, so it was even faster than lightning. They chased for 10 miles out of the snow-covered city and came to a towering forest on the outskirts. The gray-clothed, middle-aged man flashed into the forest and disappeared. At that moment, an old man with white eyebrows and beard came out of the forest and blocked their way. He shouted with a gloomy face and scoffed. Who are you? Chu Li said, My lady. Shuelayu pushed out her palm, and light sprinkled down. Suddenly, the old man was shrouded in black light, and the black light completely engulfed his body. It's the great heavenly demon. Shuelayu shouted. The expressions of one E and the others changed slightly. Great Azuras were difficult to deal with, and the great heavenly demon was even more so. Although they were supreme grade, they could not help but tremble. They slowly surrounded him, and then slowly approached him, cautious and vigilant. Are you from the Rainmaster Palace? The old man with white eyebrows and beard asked. He did not care about the black light circulating around him, and calmly sized them up. Shuelayu said, How dare you barge into our hinterland? It's just a grandmaster. I can come and go as I please. The old man shook his head. But since you've come to me, you can only blame your bad luck and bad fate. He suddenly disappeared and reappeared behind Wen Yi and slammed his palm down. His body movement technique was unimaginably fast. When he felt that something was wrong, but it was too late to move. Just as the palm energy was about to reach him, a palm suddenly appeared behind him, and it was Chu Li's right palm. Bang! Chu Li and the old man's palm collided, and he felt a gloomy force instantly enter his body. It was as pure as the water of an ice spring, and then it turned into scorching magma, as if it was going to evaporate all the blood in his body. Chu Li frowned and took a step back to relieve the force. The Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture and this strange inner energy faced each other. When it changed, the Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture's inner energy changed as well. Yin and Yang were exchanged, and the transition between real and fake was so fast that it was dazzling. The old man frowned and looked at Chu Li, feeling strange. Almost no one could withstand his heavenly demon palm, and even those with a higher cultivation level than him would be slightly injured, but this young man did not seem to be injured. Wen Yi's face darkened, and he slammed his palm. Bang! The old man slammed his palm, and Wen Yi was sent flying. Only then did the others realize how powerful this great heavenly demon was. Chapter 2045. When the others saw this, they dared not act alone. They did not know Chu Li's depth, but they knew Wen Yi's cultivation level. They would not be able to take a hit from him. The great heavenly demon was too powerful, so they could only attack together. Faced with the joint attack of the 5 people, the old man drifted like a ghost and easily broke free from their encirclement. He appeared beside Shuoyu and was about to kill her with one hit. Once she was killed, the others would lose their fighting spirit. Bang, 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 bang. Several Sword of Oblivion hit his protective black light. The old man's movements paused for a moment, and he swung his palm at the Sword of Oblivion. Chu Li leaped to Shuoyu's side and attacked the old man with the Sword of Oblivion, making it difficult for him to take care of Shuoyu. Wen Yi, who had flown far away, shouted, "Everyone, use formations." He shouted and drifted back with blood at the corner of his mouth. He joined the other 5 people and formed a formation to surround the old man. The old man wanted to escape from the formation, but was entangled by the Sword of Oblivion. The Sword of Oblivion looked light and traceless, but its power was shocking. Chu Li was very satisfied with the Sword of Oblivion. Although it was not as powerful as the Sky Killer Sword, it was only inferior to the Supreme Vajra Palm. If he could understand the Sword of Oblivion more deeply in the future, he might be able to surpass the Supreme Vajra Palm. Unfortunately, understanding the Sword of Oblivion required too much energy. He would rather use this time to understand the Supreme Vajra Scripture. It still contained wonders that he had not fully understood, so its power needed to be improved. Moreover, once he joined forces with Sun Mingwei, their combined power would be amazing, and they would be like tigers that had grown wings. Therefore, the Supreme Vajra Scripture was still his main focus. He only passed the Sword of Oblivion to Shao Qi and only understood it when he had the time. Bang, 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 bang. The 6 people's palm energy combined into one and formed a stronger force that attacked the old man. The old man could not avoid it and could only face it head-on. After the 6 people's palm energy combined, they were not inferior to the old man. However, the old man's palm energy was unpredictable, and the heavenly demonic palm was so powerful that it was difficult to stop him. Shuoyu said softly, "Chu Li, you should kill this guy as soon as possible. Otherwise, if more helpers come, we'll be killed." Chu Li said, "My lady, why don't you leave first?" "Of course I have to stay." Shuoyu frowned and said, "I'm avenging my second brother. How can I go back?" Chu Li shook his head and said, "This fellow is too dangerous, and I don't know much about heavenly demons. I don't know what kind of secret skills they have. If they go all out, they might not be able to take care of your safety." "I'm fine. Go ahead and kill him as soon as possible," Shuoyu said. Chu Li shook his head helplessly and took a deep breath. Suddenly, the sky was filled with golden light, which turned into golden palms that struck the elder. Bam, 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 bam. Chu Li's palm force was just right. It matched Wen Yi's and the other 5's formation, causing the power of the formation to suddenly double. This increased the pressure on the elder, and in the blink of an eye, Chu Li had hit him several times. The black light on the old man's body was abnormally flexible. It was not damaged even after a few palm strikes. The old man did not seem to be injured at all. Chu Li immediately understood that the heavenly demon's body was strong enough. It seemed that the heavenly demon power was superior to his own. Not only did it have the heavenly demon's inner energy, but it also had the strong body that his heavenly demon scripture had. Bam, 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 bam. Chu Li continued to attack and hit the old man several times. His supreme Vajra palm was shockingly powerful, but when it landed on the old man, it still could not hurt him. The heavenly demon's inner energy was extremely strange and unpredictable. Like the Earth Matrix in reincarnation scripture, it could transform the opponent's palm energy and dispel the palm energy. Moreover, after taking a few hits, not only was the old man not injured, but he also became more agile. It was obvious that he had transformed the supreme Vajra palm energy into his own palm energy. The wonders of the heavenly demonic power could be seen clearly. Seeing this, Shuelayu also attacked. Her infinite palm turned into a clear light, but unfortunately, it did not affect the old man at all. Under the siege of 8 people, the old man seemed to be at a disadvantage, but he was still at ease, as if he could fight forever. Therefore, Chuli divided his attention and attacked the old man with the sword of oblivion and the supreme Vajra palm like a storm. This forced the old man into a panic, causing him to take a few more hits and 2 more swords. The sword of oblivion was pure and strange. The heavenly demonic power had dispelled most of the attacks, but there was still a small part that could not be dispelled. When the attacks landed on the old man, they were directly blocked by his strong body and did not hurt him. The old man suddenly let out a low roar. The roar was deep and distant, causing the expressions of the 8 people present to change. This fellow was already so difficult to deal with that 8 people could not even take him down. If another great heavenly demon came, they could only run for their lives. Therefore, they increased their attacks in an attempt to kill him as soon as possible. Shuelayu sighed and took out a red bead the size of a longan from her bosom. It looked like a ball of flame was dancing in the bead. Chuli immediately felt the danger and wanted to retreat. Shuelayu's action of taking out the red bead was very secretive. Moreover, she gently held the red bead with her left hand. When she took her left hand out of her bosom, the others could not see what she had taken out. She raised her voice and said, "All of you, step back. I'll do it. 9th Princess." The others were puzzled, but they still stepped back and stood beside her. Shuelayu gently swatted at the old man. Her movements were light and elegant, as if she was dancing, which was pleasing to the eye. The old man frowned and wanted to dodge, but stopped. He smiled and swatted at her with his palm, intending to kill her. Since this little girl wanted to show off, he would kill her while he was at it. Pop! The old man suddenly trembled. His body froze as he watched a cold light flash in Shuelayu's sleeve and pierce his heart. The old man looked down at his chest and then widened his eyes. He stared at Shuelayu in disbelief. Shuelayu gently shook her head and turned to ask, "Can you still catch that fellow?" "Yes." Chuli nodded. It seemed that the red bead in Shuelayu's hand must have contained a strange force. Otherwise, the old man would not have been so stunned. The great heavenly demon's heavenly demonic power was extremely refined, but could not withstand Shuelayu's attack. Chuli speculated that if he had been hit by this attack, the result would have been the same. Shuelayu hid a treasure sword in her sleeve. She usually carried it on her elbow and could use it at a critical moment. It seemed that the great heavenly demon's weakness was the heart, which was different from Chu Li's heavenly demon scripture. Chu Li had originally planned to force Wen Yi and Shuelayu to see what tricks they had up their sleeves so that he could kill them at the critical moment. He did not expect Shuelayu to have such a powerful trump card. He did not know what kind of treasure this red bead was, but it had such power that even he was afraid of it. If it was used on him and could be concealed from his senses, it could threaten his safety. The treasures of the Outland should not be underestimated. Chuli became vigilant. "Let's go after it," Shuelayu said. Chuli nodded and glanced at the great heavenly demon's corpse on the ground. Then, he turned around and entered the vast forest. After a while, they arrived at the waist of a mountain and stopped in front of a stone wall. Chuli pointed at the stone wall. "It should be hiding here." Shuelayu looked around. Wen Yi and the others also looked carefully for a while and shook their heads. It was impossible for someone to hide on such a bare stone wall. Chu Li said, "This is a formation." Chapter 2046. When he asked, "Brother Chu, Do you know about formations? Chu Li nodded. I know a thing or two. When he smiled, I didn't expect that. Can you break this formation? I'll try. Chu Li frowned. I'm just afraid that there are other heavenly demons, or even great heavenly demons hiding in this formation. If that's the case, this might be a stronghold for heavenly demons, when he said. Chu Li turned to look at Shueluoyu. He had already noticed that Shueluoyu was not in a good state. It was obvious that using the red ball treasure had a price, and the price was not small. Otherwise, Shueluoyu would not have waited until the last moment to use it. Shueluoyu shook her head, indicating that he did not need to worry. She saw the worry in Chu Li's eyes and felt a warmth in her heart. She sighed to herself. One and the others only had eyes for heavenly demons and did not think about her at all. They did not even notice that she was injured. Chu Li was much more sensitive than them, and he was smart enough not to make a sound. She was more satisfied with Chu Li, but also more afraid of him. As a superior, one had to use both kindness and authority. One had to win over the other's heart and keep them in awe. Otherwise, the other's ambition would inevitably grow, and the junior would subdue the senior. This was human nature, and no one could avoid it. Therefore, a powerful person like Chu Li must be put in an important position, but it was also necessary to teach him a lesson from time to time, lest he became arrogant and could no longer be used. Chu Li circled around the stone wall, and finally, he suddenly took a few steps diagonally and disappeared in a flash with a strange footwork. Everyone was stunned. Bang! Two figures shot out. Chu Li and the middle-aged man from before appeared in front of everyone. There was a flash of light, and the middle-aged man was hit. It was Shueluoyu who attacked before everyone else. Bang! The middle-aged man was stunned after taking the hit. Chu Li followed up with another hit. The middle-aged man stood motionless and took the hit. Shueluoyu flashed in front of him, and there was a flash of cold light in her sleeve. Ugh! The middle-aged man clutched his chest, and his eyes widened as he fell to the ground. Chu Li flashed to Shueluoyu's side and pressed his left palm on her back. Shueluoyu only felt a strange aura penetrate into her body, and the feeling of emptiness suddenly eased. The burning pain in her internal organs was also suddenly relieved, as if the rain had fallen and moistened her internal organs that were almost burning. The jewel she used contained a strange power. She used this power to defend against the enemy, but she also hurt herself. It was a situation where both sides were injured. She could use the medicinal pills and the mental cultivation technique to defend herself, but she couldn't avoid the pain. Chu Li's inner energy was really strange. It just so happened to be able to restrain the backlash from the orb. Shueluoyu turned to look at Chu Li. She nodded and stared at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's chest was pierced by the sword, and he was already dead. This was different from Chu Li. As long as his heavenly demonic orb was not destroyed, he would not die. However, this middle-aged man did not have such an abnormality. He could only die when his heart was pierced. He had lost all signs of life. When he said, "Ninth Princess, let us do it. Search him," Shueluoyu ordered. One and the other 5 clasped their fists. They quickly searched the middle-aged man and found every item he had on him. They even found the short needle hidden in his hair and placed it in front of Shueluoyu. Shueluoyu stared at these items and gently touched them. Her delicate hand suddenly trembled as she slowly picked up a ring. At first glance, this ring seemed to be made of white jade, but did not have any luster. It did not seem to be real white jade, but a stone of inferior quality that looked like white jade. Moreover, it had a simple and unadorned design. There was only a bare ring. She stared at this ring and reached out her left hand. There was an identical ring on her snow-white left pinky. When she saw this, she no longer had any doubts. This was the guy who killed second brother. "Ninth Princess, is it him?" When he asked, Shueluoyu nodded. "It's him. Let's go." Everyone nodded. They were worried that the great heavenly demon would come again. Based on the ninth princess's ability, she might not be able to kill the great heavenly demon again. In a flash, everyone returned to the ninth princess's residence. Shueluoyu's face was covered with a white veil, so no one could see her expression. However, her bright eyes were slightly red, and it was obvious that she was not calm. One and the others tactfully left, but Chu Li could not leave. He could only stand in the corner of the hall motionlessly. He withdrew his aura and blended in with his surroundings as if he had disappeared. Shuelu stood in the hall in a daze. After an hour, she came back to her senses and turned her head. "Come with me to see second brother." Chu Li nodded. Shuelu left the residence and the Rainmaster's hall. She went to a huge peak and saw a grave halfway up the mountain. 2 old trees were planted in front of the grave. They were tall and straight, reaching into the sky. Shuelu stood in front of the grave and took off her veil to reveal her beautiful face. She murmured in a low voice. Chu Li stood in the distance and sighed to himself. It seemed that Shuelu and her second brother were very close. Second brother had raised her since she was a child, so she was like a brother and a father. However, as the hall leader, her father was either cultivating or dealing with the affairs of the hall. She could only see him a few times a year. Shuelu only came back to her senses when it was dusk. She glanced at Chu Li, who was not far away, and turned to leave. The 2 of them returned to the backyard of the residence. Shuelu sat in the gazebo on the lake and sighed. "Chu Li, thank you." Chu Li shook his head. Shuelu asked, "What do you want as a reward? What else do you want other than a rank 1 merit?" Chu Li asked, "Are there any spirit pills that can increase one's cultivation level?" "You want to increase your cultivation level?" Shuelu frowned. "With your current cultivation level, these spirit pills won't be very effective." Chu Li replied, "I want to use it on Madame Xiao Qi." Shuelu pondered for a while and slowly nodded. All right, if she wanted to use Chu Li, she must have investigated him in secret. She sighed. "But I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for her to become an enlightened master with this." She guessed that Chu Li wanted to use the spirit pills to increase Xiao Qi's cultivation level. Once Fa Yuan from the Tempest Temple ascended to heaven, Xiao Qi would most likely take over the position of an enlightened master. After ascending, she would have a very high starting point. The death of a Grand Master and the ascension of an enlightened master had a very different status in the Outland. It also determined the quality of one's aptitude. After a Grand Master reached the Outland, it would be difficult for him to step into the ranks of Supreme Masters unless he reached the end of his life. Chu Li said, "I'll think of a way." "All right." Shuelu nodded. "I'll give you a bottle of chaotic repair pills." Chu Li fist saluted. "Thank you, my lady." Shuelu waved her hand. "I'll give you a month's vacation. I'll cultivate in isolation for a while." Chu Li nodded. He could not suppress his excitement. With the chaotic repair pill, Xiao Qi's chances of becoming an enlightened master would greatly increase. He had the Sky Pill, which was a spirit medicine that could increase one's cultivation level, but Xiao Qi had already consumed enough of it, so the medicine's effects were almost gone. However, the Heaven-Mending Pill was different. The spirit pills from the Outland were indeed superior to those from the lower realm. With this bottle of chaotic repair pills, Xiao Qi's cultivation level would greatly increase after consuming it. Shuelu stood up and left. After a while, she returned with a jade bottle and handed it to Chu Li. Chu Li took it and opened it. There were a total of 9 green pills. He smiled and kept it in his pocket. "You must be eager." "Go," Shuelu said. Chapter 2047. Chu Li hugged Xiao Qi as they lay on the bed. Her silky black hair rested on Chu Li's arm. Chu Li's large hand gently caressed her jade-like back as he spoke of his plan. "It's time to put this matter aside." Xiao Qi lifted her head from his embrace and gently nodded. Her face was blushing, and her eyes were like water. She was so beautiful that Chu Li was tempted. As her eyes wandered, she was thinking about what to do. As the imperial court stabilized and Purple Light Pavilion was about to be established, she would not be of much use here. Second eldest sister was enough to support her here, and Lu Yuron was also there to help. Chu Li said, "Then start cultivating and I'll help you." "Are you almost done cultivating the heart technique of the 4 spirit beasts?" "I've been improving," Xiao Qi said. "Unfortunately, I can't reach your level. Without the help of spirit beasts, it'll be difficult for you to reach that level." Chu Li shook his head. but it's too troublesome to work with spirit beasts. It's better to cultivate directly. I'll think of a way. What should I do? Shao-Chi asked. My understanding of the Sword of Oblivion is going smoothly. She felt that her understanding of the Sword of Oblivion was getting deeper. The regal sword scripture and the Sword of Oblivion were not the same thing. They looked similar, but were completely different. Two different states of mind and heart techniques could not be confused. However, her experience in understanding the regal sword scripture was the most valuable and greatly helped her understand the divine book of Oblivion. Under her hard work, the Sword of Oblivion improved by leaps and bounds, and its power was astonishing. Chuli nodded. Then take the Vitality Mending Pill. After your cultivation level has increased, I'll help you to break through to enlightened mastery. Is it really that easy? Shao-Chi frowned. Although she believed in Chuli, she had always been doubtful. It was too easy to become an enlightened mastery. If the others who were working hard but had no hope of becoming an enlightened master found out, how sad would it be? She felt that it was a little unreal. Chuli smiled. It's not easy to become an enlightened master, but as long as these conditions are met, it's not that difficult. If it's that easy, why were there so few enlightened masters 1,000 years ago? Shao-Chi asked. With the help of a heavenly deity, it was very easy to become a heavenly deity. Heavenly deities from 1,000 years ago should be everywhere on the streets. Chuli could not help but laugh. Everything depends on who does it. You might think that it's easy, but others might not. First, they must cultivate the 4 spiritual beasts heart technique to a sufficient level. Then, they must have a strong enough cultivation level. And finally, they must have the Heaven Scroll of Indifference. Not a single one can be missing. It's not that easy for others to meet these conditions. The Heavenly Scroll of Indifference was a martial art passed down by the sky beyond sky, and it was very important for one to become an enlightened master. It was almost impossible for others to cultivate the Heaven's Book of Indifference. It was just like how the Heaven's Book of Indifference had been in the sky beyond heaven for so many years. Countless young talents tried to comprehend it, but in the end, no one was able to truly comprehend it. Shao-Chi's method of becoming an enlightened master was no different from the method of becoming an enlightened master. The only difference was that other enlightened masters were sealed by the Grandmaster, while Shao-Chi was sealed by Chuli. In this case, Chuli had seized her authority. Through the Heavenly Star Insight technique, he vaguely understood that the power of becoming an enlightened master might come from the Grandmaster above the Grandmaster. Therefore, the Heaven Scroll of Indifference was crucial as it could prevent this power from counterattacking Chuli and Shao-Chi. This was vaguely deduced by his Heavenly Star Insight technique. If it was someone else, it would be difficult for them to know this secret. If they foolishly used the Enlightenment technique to help someone become an enlightened master, they would definitely die. Shao-Chi sighed. Are you really confident? Actually, it's not necessary to become an enlightened master to go to the Grandmaster. Chuli shook his head. Just listen to me. Let's start today. All right. Shao-Chi nodded. They sat on the peak of a mountain surrounded by 6 stone towers. The moonlight shone on them like water, making their clothes look even more flawless. A cool breeze blew, and Shao-Chi's hair fluttered. She said softly, I'm going to start. After consuming the chaotic repair pill, her cultivation level had increased by a lot, and she was more confident. Chuli sat opposite her and smiled. When you become an enlightened master later, there will be lightning. Don't panic. Use the Sword of Oblivion to deal with it. Don't push me away. I can handle lightning. Okay. Shao-Chi nodded and closed her eyes. She sat upright with her eyes closed and activated the 4 spiritual beasts heart technique. Activating the 4 spiritual beasts heart technique at the same time was not something an ordinary person could do. One must be able to do 4 things at once, and this talent alone could stop countless masters. Chu Li's eyes flashed, and he stared at her without blinking. The surrounding spiritual force gradually surged over. It was as if Shao-Chi had become a whirlpool, constantly devouring the spiritual force around her. After a while, Chuli took a deep breath and closed his eyes. The little beast in the void of his mind opened its eyes and mouth. From all four directions, a strange spiritual force surged over. It was the spiritual force of the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise. After it entered Chu Li's body, it directly surged into his mind and into the little beast's mouth. Chu Li's mind moved slightly, and the little beast suddenly exhaled. The spiritual force immediately surged into Shao-Chi's body. Bang! The shadows of the black tortoise and white tiger appeared under Shao-Chi's feet, and the shadows of the azure dragon and vermilion bird appeared above her head. The four shadows slowly lifted her up, and the spiritual force from all four directions continuously surged into her body. The shadows of the four spiritual beasts became more and more solid, and finally became so clear that it was no different from a real person. Chu Li was surprised to see this. When he became an enlightened master, there were not so many strange phenomena. As the four spiritual beasts became clear and real, they suddenly entered Shao-Chi's body together. Bang! A soft explosion came from Shao-Chi's body, as if something had been opened. She froze in the void, motionless, as if she was standing on the ground. The dark clouds in the sky quickly gathered and formed a black umbrella above their heads. Boom! Thunder boomed, and lightning swam in the dark clouds. Chu Li flashed to her side and held her left hand. Shao-Chi opened her eyes and looked at him in confusion. She was still immersed in the incomparably profound feeling. After stepping into the heavenly deity realm, the world became completely different, as if she had changed to another world. Her understanding of this world underwent a complete change. Every object and scene was beautiful and moving people. Chu Li said, "Sword of Oblivion." Shao-Chi came back to her senses, and the Sword of Oblivion appeared above her head. It was as clear as a real sword, as if it could control a sword. Rumble! Heavenly lightning descended and struck the two of them. Chu Li held Shao-Chi's hand and let the thunder train her body. The thunder that could not withstand, it was absorbed by him and entered the thunder orb. The thunder became stronger and finally turned into a pool of thunder that drowned the two. The blue light was dazzling, and the two seemed to be no longer ordinary people. After half an hour, the thunder dissipated, and the two stood in the void, feeling full of divine energy. Shao-Chi looked at Chu Li in surprise. After becoming an enlightened master, she could feel how powerful Chu Li was. The thunder could not do anything to him, and it was truly miraculous. If thunder could not hurt him, what other force in the world could? Chu Li saw through her thoughts and shook his head. There are many forces that can hurt me, and you must be more careful in the Grandmaster's boundary. He was full of smiles. He did not expect things to go so smoothly. Amiba. A Buddhist chant was heard, and Fa Yuan, dressed in a purple robe, appeared from the void. He pressed his palms together. "Congratulations, Madam Chu." Shao-Chi pressed her palms together. Chu Li smiled. "Fa Yuan, long time no see." Chapter 2048. It was obvious that Shao-Chi had also cultivated to become a deity. It was impossible for Shao-Chi's aptitude to surpass Chu Li's. Chu Li was the only one in the world who could cultivate and become a god, so it was unlikely for Shao-Chi to do so. Therefore, the result must be Chu Li's doing. He speculated that Chu Li had forcefully elevated Shao-Chi's cultivation level using the empowerment technique, but no matter how he thought about it, he really could not figure out how he could achieve this step. It was no different from the Grandmaster's apotheosis. Chu Li smiled. "It's fate, and it's also Madam's opportunity." Shao-Chi said, "Let's go back and talk." Fa Yuan turned his head to look at the void. "I'm just afraid that His Majesty will be unhappy." Suin, who was dressed in a bright yellow robe, walked out of the void. He smiled and pressed his palms together. "Greetings, Head Chief, Madam. Your Majesty." Shao-Chi smiled. Compared to before, Suin was much more composed and magnanimous. He placed his palms together and said, "Congratulations, lady." Shao-Chi gently shook her head. "He's just lucky." Su Kong smiled and looked at Fa Yuan. "Master is here too." Sparks flew as their gazes collided in midair. Although the Titanium Temple and the Tempest Temple were both Buddhist sects, their relationship was not as good as the Tempest Temples. Their paths of cultivation were completely different. Due to Chu Li, Fa Yuan and Suen had a rather harmonious relationship and were able to join forces to deal with Azura. However, even if they joined hands, they were still secretly competing with each other. They were all profound in Buddhism and had very little resentment, but they could not get rid of the intention to compete with each other. Fa Yuan smiled and pressed his palms together. "Your Majesty," Chu Li said, "Your Majesty, since Madam has become an enlightened master, she'll have to follow me to the Outland." AI. Suen sighed softly and said, "If Emperor's mother is alone, don't worry, she can come back any time," Chu Li said. "She'll come back often." "That's good." Suen revealed a smile. "Four must come back more often, less mother is lonely." Xiao Qi gently shook her head. She and Co. Shi's way of doing things were different. If the two of them were to work together to deal with government affairs, it would be hard to avoid disputes. It was just right for her to leave. Chu Li said, "Madam, please follow His Majesty back to Fairy's capital first." "Yes." Xiao Qi nodded. Suen pressed his palms together and disappeared with Xiao Qi. Fa Yuan's gaze stopped at the void where the two of them had disappeared for a while before he turned to look at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. "His Majesty has cultivated the 10 lifetimes of Buddhahood technique. He doesn't have any grudges with you, does he?" "I have no personal grudges with His Majesty." Fa Yuan shook his head. "On the contrary, I admire His Majesty." Unfortunately, the two of them belonged to different temples, so they couldn't be intimate. Chu Li nodded. It was understandable. "Brother Chu, I think something is wrong." Fa Yuan raised his eyebrows and sat on a rock. He sighed and said, "This month, the great Ji dynasty is in chaos and the martial arts world is in turmoil. Unrest? Is that abnormal?" Chu Li was puzzled. Fa Yuan said, "The grudges in the martial arts world are especially intense. You kill me, I kill you, and we all fall into the entanglement of grudges. Many grandmasters have died, and this has indirectly weakened the strength of our Ji dynasty's martial arts world." "What about the other countries?" Chu Li asked. Fa Yuan nodded. "That's true. That's why it's hard to determine which force did this. It looks like it was made by the Fu dynasty." Chu Li thought for a moment and sighed. "Looks like the heavenly demon has also entered our world." He used the Heavenly Star Insight skill to predict and suddenly had a vague feeling. Heavenly demon? Could it be the heavenly demonic sect? Fa Yuan was stunned. Chu Li shook his head. The heavenly demonic sect and the heavenly demon are two different things. From what I know, the Outland has two major opponents, the Azura and the heavenly demon. The Azura has already entered our world, and it looks like the heavenly demon has also come to join the fun. The heavenly demon. Fa Yuan's handsome face darkened. As a Buddhist monk and the head of the Tempest Temple, he naturally knew about the heavenly demon. "It's shapeless and traceless," Fa Yuan said slowly. "It's ever-changing and traceless." Chu Li nodded slowly. "Then we're in big trouble," Fa Yuan said. "Let the Stargazing Pavilion do it. The Stargazing Pavilion should be able to calculate the traces of the heavenly demon. Then, the Tempest Temple will chase after it. We still have to rely on Buddhism to deal with the heavenly demon," Chu Li said. "The temple does have a secret technique to defeat the heavenly demon. Unfortunately, it's not easy to cultivate and it requires Saraira." Fa Yuan frowned. Chu Li said, "The heavenly demon is more dangerous than the Azura. We can't let it do as it pleases." Fa Yuan, "It's all up to you." He knew how powerful the heavenly demonic power was. It was ever-changing. If it was purely for destruction, the danger would be beyond imagination. The martial arts world would be in chaos, and a bloody storm would ensue. Disguising as a disciple of one sect to assassinate another sect's disciples or higher-ups would inevitably lead to a war between the two sections. One heavenly demon could stir up a storm, let alone a group. Just thinking about it made one's scalp tingle. "Brother Chu, what about you? You can't just stand by and watch, right?" Fa Yuan asked. "I don't come back often, so I can't be counted on. Chu Li shook his head. But I won't be idle when I come back. It's hard to guard against the heavenly demon. I have to be more careful in the future. Exactly. Fa Yuan nodded slowly. As a Buddhist disciple, he was no stranger to the heavenly demon. There were many mentions of it in the Buddhist scriptures, and there were special techniques to defeat it. Moreover, the heavenly demon and the Buddhist disciples were natural enemies. Once the heavenly demon descended, it would definitely cause trouble for the Buddhist disciples. Chu Li looked at the bright moon and sighed. One eventful time. Fa Yuan's expression was solemn, and his brows were solemn. The appearance of the heavenly demon would cause panic and loss of trust in the people. As a result, the relationship between people would become more and more tense, like a tightened bowstring that would eventually snap, and the world would fall into chaos. Sigh, is it really the end of the Dharma? Fa Yuan also looked up at the bright moon in the night sky. Chu Li said, "There's always a way." Fa Yuan shook his head. It's very difficult. The demon-defeating technique is difficult to cultivate. The world is so big, but how many disciples does the Tempest Temple have? It's useless even if the demon-defeating technique is made public. Without the Saraira, the demon-defeating technique is useless. When he thought of this, even if he had a strong mind, he felt a little hopeless and lost. Chu Li said, if the heavenly demon was that powerful, they would have occupied the outland long ago. There's always a way to defeat it. Fa Yuan frowned. I really can't think of a way to restrain them. Chu Li said, let Li Xinghe from Stargazing Pavilion help first. The Tempest Temple will take action and get rid of the heavenly demon now. That's the only way. Fa Yuan slowly nodded and said, Brother Chu, the outland technique might not be suitable for us. Are we really going to fall into hell? Chu Li smiled. There's always a way. Fa Yuan pressed his palms together and bowed solemnly. The next morning, Chu Li brought Shao Qi to the outland. Shao Qi was curious about everything, but she had a cold personality and did not show it on the outside. She calmly followed Chu Li to the residence in Drizzle City. Her task was to cultivate hard. Once an enlightened master reached the outland, there would be a period of rapid advancement. If she missed this period, it would be extremely difficult to advance further, and she would need time to accumulate. The spiritual energy in Drizzle City was extremely rich, and the residence he stayed in was even more so, which was beneficial for Shao Qi's cultivation. Chu Li arrived at Rainmaster City and headed to the 9th Princess residence. He wanted to find out how the Outland defended against the heavenly demon and see if it could be implemented in the lower realm. Chapter 2049. Shueluyu was playing the guzheng in the gazebo above the lake when Chu Li walked over and stood in the corner of the gazebo. Shueluyu pressed her hand down, and the sound of the guzheng stopped. She wore an emerald gown and did not cover her face with a veil, revealing her beautiful face. Her bright eyes flickered as she looked at Chu Li. Why are you back so soon? Chu Li replied, I came back as soon as the matter was settled. That's rare. Shueluyu chuckled. A gentle breeze swept over the lake and into the gazebo, ruffling her hair. Tell me, what's the matter? Chu Li said, Heavenly demons have invaded the lower realm. Shueluyu's expression changed. They've entered the lower realm? Chu Li asked, Are you surprised? Logically, heavenly demons shouldn't enter the lower realm. Shueluyu frowned. There's nothing in the lower realm that they need. What do they want? Chu Li asked. Shueluyu replied, They want the same as us spirit herbs, rare treasures, and martial arts secret manuals. To heavenly demons, the more martial arts they cultivate, the greater their improvement. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. There's nothing to find in the lower realm, so they can only get martial arts secret manuals? It's impossible for them to get martial arts secret manuals too. Shueluyu shook her head. Heavenly demons don't care about the martial arts of the lower realm. Logically speaking, they're too lazy to go to the lower realm because they think it's a waste of time. That's strange. Chu Li frowned. Could it be that Azura asked them for help? It's highly possible. Shueluyu nodded. The scariest thing about heavenly demons is that they can confuse the world. Once they find a flaw, They can easily overturn a city or even a sect or a country. Chu asked, "Is there a way to defend against them?" "No," Shuelu sighed. "In order to stop them from approaching, everyone in the extraterrestrial battlefield try to stop them from getting close to the demon suppression town. Otherwise, the Outland would have been in chaos. It's hard to stop them in the extraterrestrial battlefield, right?" Chu asked. He had seen traces of heavenly demons in the Outland more than once. "And the heaven-shaking tower," Shuelu said. "The heaven-shaking tower will sense the infiltration of the heavenly demons." Chu nodded slowly. When he was in the lower realm, he could sense the approach of the Azura, so it was not surprising that the heaven-shaking tower could sense the infiltration of the sky demons. However, he discovered that many of the sky fiends were not sensed. "The heaven-shaking tower can sense all heavenly demons?" Chu asked. Shuelu frowned and thought for a while. Then she shook her head and said, "For some small things, in a state of disarray, anger is replaced by anger. Haze Huang Rue, Xiao Chu Ho Bei, trample on the Wu Shan, Fei Yin." Chu raised his eyebrows. Shuelu said, "The heaven-shaking tower senses through the mysteries of heaven. So the heaven-shaking tower can't do anything to those heavenly demons who can't touch the mysteries of heaven. However, these heavenly demons aren't necessarily spies. It's possible that they really want to live in the realm beyond heaven." Chu smiled. "It can't be that you yearn for the prosperity of the Outland, right?" "That's true." Shuelu nodded with a smile. "It is said that the heavenly demon realm and the Azura realm are far less bustling than our human realm upon heavens. Does anyone understand them?" Chu frowned. "The heavenly demons can enter here, but our people can't? It's very difficult." Shuelu sighed. "Unless they cultivate the heavenly demonic power. However, once the heavenly demonic power is cultivated, it's difficult to abolish it. From then on, they'll become heavenly demons. Who would dare to do that?" Chu pondered. "Heavenly demons are no different from humans, right?" Through his observations these days, he realized that Azuras looked no different from humans, but they were actually not the same species. Azuras had surpassed the scope of humans and were immortal. On the other hand, heavenly demons were real humans who only cultivated the heavenly demonic power. Shuelu said, "Heavenly demons are indeed humans, but because of the influence of the heavenly demonic power, they can't be regarded as normal humans. The heavenly demonic power was mysterious and overbearing. Once it was cultivated, it could not be abolished. Any heart technique cultivated will be transformed into heavenly demonic energy, and heavenly demonic energy could also be transformed into any heart technique. However, at the end of the day, it was still the heavenly demonic power. Therefore, once one cultivated the heavenly demonic power, one would become a heavenly demon, and resistance would be futile. After cultivating the heavenly demonic power, it would affect one's temperament and magnify one's desires. The desire in one's heart would be magnified countless times, and one's bones would give birth to a strong and endless desire. One would constantly think about improving their cultivation level and cultivate desperately. Heavenly demons could come to the Outland and hide at will, but humans could not cultivate the heavenly demonic power to impersonate heavenly demons. Otherwise, they would directly become heavenly demons. This had happened many times in the Outland, and after that they had given up. Chu said, "If that's the case, these heavenly demons are helping Azura, stirring up a bloodbath in the lower realm and strengthening Azura's strength. If there's no defensive method, the lower realm will really suffer." Shuelu frowned and did not say anything. Even if each hall and sect had a secret skill that could break through heavenly demons, it was useless because it was difficult to cultivate. It would be difficult to pass it on to the people of the lower realm, and the defensive method would be useless. If that was the case, the lower realm would really be doomed. Chu sighed and said, "Looks like I'll have to kill them myself." "You're going to fight heavenly demons?" Shuelu sighed and said, "Then you have to be careful. Heavenly demons are unpredictable, and once you get entangled with them, it'll be very troublesome. People around you may suffer at any time, or someone might assassinate you." Chu Li said, "We can't just let them wreak havoc." Shueluoyu sighed. Not every problem in the world could be solved. Just like Azura and heavenly demons, there was no permanent solution. They could only passively defend and try their best to hold on. Fortunately, it had been a stalemate, and the balance had not been broken. However, the lower realm could not be compared to the Outland. The enlightened masters of the lower realm could not resist heavenly demons at all. Would the Outland just stand by and watch? Chu Li asked with a frown. Shueluoyu said, "I'll inform the Elder Society, and a Celestial will descend to help." Although the Outland had lured Azura to the lower realm, they did not completely give up on them. They only let the lower realm hold on for a while to disperse the Azura strength. Once they had a chance, they could chase Azura away. Chu Li nodded and said, "It's better than nothing. I'll go back first." "Go." Shueluoyu nodded. Chu Li Fist saluted and turned to leave the 9th princess residence. When he returned to his residence in Drizzle City, he found 2 women sitting in the main hall, chatting with Xiao Qi. The 2 women were dressed in green and looked valiant. One of them was about the same age as Xiao Qi, slightly less beautiful than her, but she was already a rare beauty. The other was a middle-aged beauty with a charming charm. Xiao Qi stood up and said, "These 2 are the seniors from the Tai Ching sect, Masters Junior Huining and Senior Sister Jingya." Chu Li Fist saluted and smiled. "It's my honor to have you 2 seniors here." The 2 women stood up and Fist saluted. "Young Master Chu, your name is spread far and wide." The middle-aged beauty, Huining, smiled sweetly. "Nice to meet you." Chu Li shook his head and smiled. He looked at Xiao Qi with a puzzled expression. Huining said, "Since young Master Chu is back, we won't disturb you. We'll take our leave first." Xiao Qi said, "Masters Junior and Senior Sister don't have to be so formal. You can stay in the residence. We have a place to stay. It's in the south of the city." Huining smiled. "We won't disturb you too." Chapter 2050. Chu Li pulled Xiao Qi back to the backyard and held her cold and soft hand. "What happened?" "The seniors from the sect saw me and came to visit." Xiao Qi smiled. She did not expect the Tai Ching sect to be so compassionate and well-informed. As soon as she arrived at the Outland, they received the news and came to visit, which made her feel warm. Chu Li said, "They're very considerate." Xiao Qi gently pulled his hand. "What are you thinking about? Don't think that people are so evil." Chu Li smiled. "Madam, you're so smart. You should understand that there's no such thing as being close for no reason. Maybe it's because I'm from the Tai Ching sect and cultivated to become a god," Xiao Qi said. "Are you saying that I won't return to the Tai Ching sect?" Although they did not say much and only talked about the customs of the Outland and the differences between the Outland and the lower realm, how could the intelligent Xiao Qi not know why they came? It was obvious that they wanted her to enter the Tai Ching sect and return to the Tai Ching sect. "Do you want to go back?" Chu Li asked. Xiao Qi shook her head. "There's no freedom." Chu Li said, "Although there's no freedom, there are many benefits. Although the Tai Ching sect is a hidden sect, it's powerful. Once you enter the sect, no one will dare to bully you, and you can easily integrate into the Outland. If Goddess Attraction Mountain had not been destroyed, he would not be in this situation. Even if he entered the Rain Master's Hall, he would still be somewhat isolated. If Goddess Attraction Mountain had not been destroyed, after he entered the Goddess Attraction Mountain, the disciples would quickly accept him because they were from the same sect. He would not be isolated, and after a few years in the sect, he would completely become a Grand Master and integrate into the Outland. Now, even though he was a peerless martial art master, he was faintly isolated and guarded. Looking at the support Sun Mingwei received and comparing it to his current situation, it was obvious the benefits of entering the sect. "You want me to enter the Tai Ching sect?" Xiao Qi frowned. She did not want to be separated from Chu Li. The 2 of them would feel warm and satisfied even if they stayed together. There was no need for earth-shattering and bright glory. A peaceful and ordinary life was what she pursued. Chu Li held her hand tightly and slowly nodded. "Entering the sect is a shortcut. This is a deep lesson for me. Let me think." Xiao Qi frowned slightly. She wanted to understand more about the sky beyond heaven before deciding whether or not to enter the Tai Ching sect. Chu Li smiled and said, "Don't worry. Even if you enter the Tai Ching sect, we can still meet at any time. I'll just go over every night." "I'm just afraid that they won't agree," Xiao Qi said. Chu Li said, "You're now a person who has cultivated to become a god. You're in high demand. They'll definitely agree to this condition." Xiao Qi flashed a radiant smile. While they were talking, the butler came to inform them that there were 2 disciples of Wang Qing Cliff outside, asking to see them. Chu Li welcomed him personally. He had a good impression of Wang Qing Cliff, and he owed them a big favor, so he wanted to get close to them. Moreover, he saw the people standing outside the gate, so he had to welcome them personally. "Senior Lu." The middle door opened, and Chu Li gave a fist salute as he walked out of the door. He laughed heartily and said, "I didn't expect Senior Lu to grace us with your presence. Please forgive me for not welcoming you earlier." Dressed in a yellow robe, Lu Congming stood outside the door with a smile and cupped his fists. "Young Master Chu, sorry for the intrusion." "Senior Lu, what are you talking about? Hurry up and invite him in." Chu Li smiled. He nodded at the young man beside Lu Congming to greet him. The young man also gave a fist salute. "I'm Xiao Kelly." Chu Li smiled. "Brother Xiao, please." Chu Li welcomed them warmly and sat down in the main hall. When a maid served tea, Lu Congming took a sip and put down the teacup. He looked at him with a smile. "Young Master Chu, congratulations." Chu Li smiled. "What do you mean, Senior Lu?" Lu Congming laughed. "Your wife has become an enlightened master and stepped into the Grandmaster's boundary. From now on, you and your wife will no longer be separated. Isn't that a cause for celebration? Senior Lu, you're quite well informed." Chu Li smiled. Lu Congming said, "I'm afraid even the Grandmaster's boundary knows about this. It's a great story for both of you to become enlightened masters." Chu Li smiled. "Your wife isn't here?" Lu Congming smiled. Chu Li smiled. "Senior Lu, you don't visit me for no reason. You're not here just to congratulate me, right? May I know which sect your wife wishes to join?" Lu Congming asked. Chu Li replied, "My wife is from the Tai Ching sect." "Does that mean she's going to join the Tai Ching sect?" Lu Congming asked. Chu Li smiled. "The senior from the Tai Ching sect has just left. My wife is still considering if she wants to join the sect. Do we have the honor to meet such an outstanding woman?" Lu Congming asked. Chu Li already knew why he was here, so he ordered the maid. A brief moment later, Xiao Qi arrived gracefully. She was dressed in a snow-white robe, which made her look cold and elegant. Her beauty was unparalleled, and when her bright eyes moved, it was as if she was not tainted by the mundane world at all. Chu Li said, "Madam, this is Senior Lu Congming and Brother Xiao Kelly from the Wang Qing Cliff." Xiao Qi fist saluted. She was still cold and only showed a faint smile. The 2 quickly returned the gesture. Lu Congming laughed. "Young Master Chu, you're truly blessed. With a wife like this, what more can I ask for?" As he spoke, he even winked. He had met Sun Mingwei before and knew that Chu Li had her as his confidant. Chu Li smiled. Lu Congming smiled. "Right, Madam Chu, do you know the Wang Qing sword?" "I know a thing or two." Xiao Qi nodded. She looked at Chu Li doubtfully. Chu Li smiled and gestured for her to calm down. Lu Congming said, "Since Madam Chu knows the Wang Qing sword, you can cultivate at the Wang Qing Cliff." Chu Li shook his head. "That's not appropriate, is it? If you know the Wang Qing sword, you'll be a disciple of the Wang Qing Cliff. No one will gossip about you." Lu Congming quickly added, "Young Master Chu, don't worry. The environment at the Wang Qing Cliff is definitely the best place to cultivate. There are many seniors who can communicate and study together. It'll be more beneficial for you to study the Wang Qing sword." Chu Li smiled. "My wife has always been cultivating the regal sword scripture. I taught her the Wang Qing sword when I had nothing better to do. It's still the regal sword scripture." "Young Master Chu, you're wrong," Lu Congming said seriously. "Although the Tai Ching sect isn't famous, it's a large sect with profound martial arts knowledge. However, it's undeniable that the regal sword scripture and the Wang Qing sword scripture can't be compared. I don't have to explain this. Young Master Chu should understand. Chu Li said, the Wang Qing sword scripture is a martial art from the previous world, but it's difficult to understand. It's possible that you won't be able to understand it even if you study it for a lifetime. On the other hand, the regal sword scripture has mature cultivation experience, so it's easier to cultivate. Lu Songming quickly said, if it's someone else, they'll naturally choose to continue cultivating the regal sword scripture. However, Madame Xiao is different. She's extremely talented. If she can improve the Wang Qing sword scripture, she'll be unparalleled in the world. Chu Li smiled at Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi remained silent. Chapter 2051. This is against the rules, isn't it? Chu Li laughed. The Wang Qing cliff was not a small sect. It was a large sect that was only inferior to the 9 divisions. The requirement to become an elder was extremely strict. One must be a supreme rank. Now that Xiao Qi had just become an enlightened master, her cultivation level could barely reach rank 2. The difference between rank 2 and supreme grade was like the difference between heaven and earth. She needed a lot of accumulation to break through to supreme grade celestial being. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a rank 2 to become an elder of the Passionless Cliff. Rules vary from person to person. Lu Tsaming chuckled. Others might not be able to break this rule, but it's different from Madame Chu. Madame Chu is a god. As long as there were no accidents, those who cultivated to godhood were destined to enter supreme grade. Therefore, it was not a big deal to promise a position as an elder in advance. Although they were both supreme grade, they were completely different. Chu Li's supreme grade was already superior to his peers. Chu Li said, that's still too preferential treatment. Madame Chu, please consider it carefully. Lu Songming smiled. Do you want to choose a safe path or a dangerous one? It's actually not that dangerous. Once you enter the Passionless Cliff, you can cultivate the martial arts of the Passionless Cliff as you please. Xiao Qi remained silent. She also felt that these conditions were too generous. Compared to the Taiqing sect, the difference was huge. Taiqing sect didn't say these things. They just wanted to invite her back to the sect to cultivate and give her a quiet environment. That was all. She was just an ordinary disciple, but Wang Qing Cliff directly gave her the position of an elder. Lu Songming said, then we'll take our leave first. If you've made a decision, you can come to the Wang Qing residence in Rainmaster City to let us know. I'll be staying there for a while, so Madame Chu, there's no need to rush into a decision. Thank you, Senior Lu. Xiao Qi nodded. Lu Songming chuckled. Of course, Madame Xiao can also join the 9 divisions. However, I must advise you not to rush into the 9 divisions. It's best if you enter a sect and reach a bottleneck in your cultivation. Then, it won't be too late to join the 9 divisions. Of course, young Master Chu's situation is different. Chu Li had directly stepped into the ranks of supreme grade. There was no point in cultivating in a sect, so he could directly enter the 9 divisions. Xiao Qi nodded slowly. Chu Li nodded in agreement and smiled. These are words from the bottom of my heart. You can't rush into the 9 divisions. Haha, old man. Luoma, stealing Osmanthus mulberry, Wanwacha, not to mention the Zue Yu Sai card. Chu Li and Xiao Qi sent them to the main entrance. The two of them returned to the backyard and sat by the lake. Xiao Qi smiled and shook her head. I can't believe I've become so popular. Am I really that good? Her aptitude was already amazing, but she had always been shrouded in Chu Li's limelight. Almost no one had noticed her strength, and all they could think about was how extraordinary Chu Li was. She did not have enough confidence in herself. In front of Chu Li, her original pride was not worth mentioning. Chu Li said, the main thing is that you're extremely talented. As long as you enter the sect and cultivate in isolation for a period of time, it'll be easy for you to achieve supreme grade. That's why the Cliff of Forgetfulness is trying to rope you in. Is it that easy? Xiao Qi asked. Chu Li smiled. Supreme grade might be difficult for others, but it's not that difficult for you. Which sect do you plan to enter? I was originally a disciple of the Taiqing sect. If I were to join another sect... Xiao Qi hesitated. Chu Li said, the Taiqing sect and the Cliff of Forgetfulness are of the same origin. The Cliff of Forgetfulness was created by a disciple of the Tai Ching sect. If that's the case, Shao Qi pondered, let's enter the Cliff of Forgetfulness. I think the divine book of forgetfulness is mysterious and unpredictable. It's even better. I want to study it. Chuli nodded. The two of them chatted as time passed. In the evening, when the two of them were preparing for dinner, a maid came to inform them that the two Tai Ching sect disciples outside wanted to see them again. Shao Qi personally went to welcome them and saw Hui Ning and Jingya. When Shao Qi welcomed them into the main hall, Chuli was already waiting. Young Qi, have you met Lu Tsaming of the Cliff of Forgetfulness? Hui Ning asked directly. Shao Qi smiled. Masters Jr. is very well informed. Did he invite you to join the Cliff of Forgetfulness? Hui Ning asked. Shao Qi nodded. He invited me to join the Cliff of Forgetfulness with his position as an elder in a mountain. Hui Ning's expression changed slightly. She scoffed. How ruthless! She did not expect the Cliff of Forgetfulness to be so generous. In comparison, the Tai Ching sect was too far behind. This made her very anxious. Although the Tai Ching sect and the Cliff of Forgetfulness had a deep relationship, there was actually a great competition between them. The disciples secretly competed with each other. The Tai Ching sect disciples wanted to surpass the Cliff of Forgetfulness and let them know that the Tai Ching sect's martial arts were the source of the Cliff of Forgetfulness. The disciples of the Cliff of Forgetfulness wanted to surpass the Tai Ching sect and let them know that the Cliff of Forgetfulness had surpassed the Cliff of Forgetfulness. If the Cliff of Forgetfulness obtained a disciple with such great aptitude like Shao Qi, she would definitely surpass the Tai Ching sect. Shao Qi said, Masters Jr., I'm still hesitating. Which sect is better? Of course, the Tai Ching sect. Hui Ning said. The potential of the Cliff of Forgetfulness martial arts is limited. It's not perfect and not systematic. If you want to go further, you'll have to continue cultivating the regal sword scripture. The regal sword scripture. Shao Qi shook her head. I want to cultivate the sword of forgetfulness. The sword of indifference is only the tip of the iceberg of the heavenly scripture of indifference. Hui Ning snorted and said, the so-called sword of oblivion is also incomplete. It's difficult to form a system. It looks powerful at first glance, but after 1,000 years, its potential has been exhausted. It's inferior to the Regal Sword Sutra. Shao Qi nodded slowly. Hui Ning continued. Even though the lineage of the Sovereign Sword Scripture is only passed down by a single person, and there's only senior sister Hui Qing in this lineage, it's been accumulated for a few tens of thousands of years, and it's extremely abundant experience. It's a bright path. Shao Qi nodded. Hui Ning continued. It's extremely difficult to pass down the lineage of the Sovereign Sword Sutra because it's too difficult to enter the sect. The requirements for talent are even stricter. Senior sister Hui Qing only has you as her disciple. Don't tell me you want the Sovereign Sword Sutra to be severed. Shao Qi said, Masters Jr., I believe we can still find a successor. Difficult, very difficult. Hui Ning sighed. If it was that easy, senior sister Hui Qing wouldn't have descended to the lower realm for you. Chuli smiled and said, the lineage has only been passed down to one person, but it hasn't been cut off. It's obvious that it's God's will. When he saw that Hui Ning wanted to use morality to pressure Shao Qi, he felt that it was inappropriate, so he could only interrupt her. Hui Ning said, if it weren't for the long lifespan of the Sovereign Sword Sutra's cultivators, the Sovereign Sword Sutra would really be severed. It hasn't been severed yet. Chuli smiled. I believe we can still find a successor. Hui Ning fell silent. Chuli smiled and said, Senior, I have an idea. How about we pass it down to both sects? He had suddenly thought of it in a flash of inspiration. Hui Ning frowned and looked at him. If it were not for Chu Li's well-known reputation, she would have definitely scolded him for being too greedy. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Pass it down to both sects and not offend anyone? Wishful thinking. Chuli smiled and said, Senior, will the Wang Qing Cliff and Tai Ching sect fight? No. Hui Ning scoffed. The two sects did not have any conflict of interest. Instead, they helped each other out. Although the disciples were usually competing with each other, once the other party encountered an enemy, they would definitely help without hesitation. After all, they had a deep relationship, as if the same blood flowed in their bodies. Chapter 2052. Hui Qing fell silent. She had never thought that there would be a disciple shared by the two sections. It was always either one or the other. Poaching the other side disciple was to suppress the other side, to be proud, and to be competitive. If the two sects shared a disciple, it would lose all meaning. Chu Li said, "If we can gather the strengths of both sects, it will be beneficial to both sections." "It's very difficult." Hui Qing shook her head and said, "The regal sword scripture and the sword of oblivion are both top-notch ultimate arts. It's already difficult to master one of them, let alone two. My wife has a better aptitude." Chu Li smiled. "It's not impossible. Why don't you give it a try? Why can't I focus on the regal sword scripture?" Hui Ning refused to give up. "Although the sword of indifference is sharp, it's only for a moment. It's not worth wasting my time." Chu Li smiled. "The heaven scroll of indifference is full of mysteries. If I can comprehend it, I'm sure I won't have a match in this world." Hui Ning snorted and said, "The heavenly tome of indifference is an absolute art from the heavens. It's not that easy to comprehend. All right, I won't persuade you anymore. Shao Qi, you should think about it carefully. This is very important." She got up and led him away gracefully. When Chu Li and Shao Qi returned, they sat in the backyard and started having their dinner. The soft light made the backyard look like it was daytime. The light was a little softer than daytime, making it look dreamy and illusory. Shao Qi was a little more beautiful, and her cold eyes also carried a little captivating power. "Your way of thinking." Shao Qi wiped the corner of her mouth with a silk handkerchief. "Both sects have joined, and we've taken advantage of them. How can there be such a good thing?" Chu Li said, "You're the most sought after now. You might be able to take advantage of me." Shao Qi shook her head. "I don't think it's possible." "How about this?" Chu Li muttered. "You should find a place to hide first." Shao Qi frowned. "It can't be that serious, right? Unless you've decided to only enter the Tai Ching sect," Chu Li said. Shao Qi hesitated. She felt that the Tai Ching sect was not bad, but due to Chu Li's influence, she felt that the Cliff of Forgetfulness was also very good. Moreover, the Heavenly Book of Forgetfulness was extremely mysterious and worth studying. Even if she could not comprehend it thoroughly, she still had Chu Li's help. She was very confident that Chu Li's comprehension was rare. It would be best if both sects could enter together. If there was only one sect, it would indeed be difficult for her to choose. She was unwilling to only cultivate the regal sword scripture, and she felt that she had let down her master by only cultivating the heavenly book of indifference. Chu Li said, "If you want to enter the two sects, then you'll have to hide." "He's afraid of master?" Shao Qi immediately understood. Chu Li smiled and said, "Master's junior Hui Ning will definitely think of a way to let your master return. Since you've already come up, why is senior Hui Qing still staying down there? Don't tell me she's thinking of nurturing second eldest sister?" Xiao Shi's mind was not on martial arts. Although she was talented in cultivating the Taishu scripture, her energy was not focused enough. Most of her time was spent dealing with government affairs. She did not have much interest in martial arts and was not hardworking enough. Shao Qi pursed her lips and smiled. She then frowned and said, "If master comes, I really can't do anything." Chu Li smiled. "Then hide for a while. I'll deal with it. Let's see if it works." "All right." Shao Qi nodded. "Where should we hide?" 100,000 hills. Chu Li said, "Go there and cultivate in isolation." "Okay," Shao Qi said. Both of them had a swift and decisive personality. They did what they thought of. Chu Li sent Shao Qi to the Spirit Crane's peak at night. He had not seen the Spirit Cranes for a while. After playing for a while, Chu Li returned at dawn. In the early morning, he washed up and was about to have breakfast when Hui Qing, dressed in a green tunic, floated in. Chu Li got up and fist saluted. "Senior, where's Shao Qi?" Hui Qing asked directly. Both of them gestured for him to sit. Hui Qing sat opposite him and looked at him faintly. I heard she's not planning to enter the Tai Ching sect. She wants to cultivate the regal sword scripture and the scroll of indifference, Chu Li said. He expected Hui Qing to come, but he did not expect it to be so soon. The return of a celestial was similar to the return of an enlightened master. Both were souls that ascended. When they reached the outland, they would need to go through the process of condensing their bodies. It would take some time. If she came in such a hurry, she would have to pay a higher price. Hui Qing scoffed. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Doesn't she know this? Chu Li said, I don't think there's anything wrong with cultivating both. They complement each other. I know it's your stupid idea. Hui Qing glared at him and scoffed. You're too greedy. According to her understanding, if Chu Li did not come up with this idea, Xiao Qi would naturally return to the Tai Ching sect and become her disciple. Once she returned, she could continue to teach her the regal sword scripture. Although she had nothing else to teach, the two of them could learn from each other and study each other. Their cultivation progress will be faster. Xiao Qi's aptitude was top-notch and was better than Hui Qing's. She had good comprehension too. Both of them had a chance to perfect the regal sword scripture. They might even be able to step into the great enlightened master's boundary. Chu Li smiled without saying a word. If that's the case, she must cultivate both sects? Hui Qing saw that Xiao Qi had gone into hiding and knew there was no other way. She could influence Xiao Qi, but not Chu Li. When they were in the lower realm, she had a deep understanding of Chu Li's character and methods. Although she had lived longer, she knew that she was no match for him. Chu Li slowly said, If you can fulfill my wish, it would be for the best. After all, you're the only one in the Tai Ching sect who cultivates the regal sword scripture. All right, I'll go back and talk to them, Hui Qing said. Chu Li gave a fist salute. Thank you, senior. Hui Qing was obviously on Xiao Qi's side and wanted to help her instead of helping the Tai Ching sect to force Xiao Qi. He had a good impression of her. Hui Qing waved her hand. I hope you've made the right choice and won't distract Xiao Qi. Chu Li smiled. Senior, I'll wait and see. By the way, do you want to cultivate the heavenly scroll of indifference? Hui Qing frowned at him. You want to teach me? It's not impossible if you want to learn it. Chu Li smiled. You're not an outsider. Hui Qing thought about it and sighed. Forget it. She was very tempted. She knew how powerful the heavenly scroll of indifference was, or else she would not have agreed to let Xiao Qi cultivate the sword of indifference. Back then, she had put in a lot of effort to comprehend it, but unfortunately, she failed and almost went astray. After a few times, she completely gave up on the heavenly scroll of indifference. She did not expect Chu Li to teach her the heavenly scroll of indifference. All she had to do was open her mouth, and she would be able to learn it. Then, she would be able to complement the regal sword scripture and improve it greatly. However, when she thought about Chu Li's identity, she gritted her teeth and rejected him. She did not want to lose her dignity as a senior. Chu Li smiled. All right, I'll let Madam study the sword of indifference with you. Hui Qing waved her hand and stood up. Let's go. Chu Li quickly said, Senior, please wait. Hui Qing stopped and looked at him. Chu Li asked, Senior, do you know that heavenly demons have infiltrated the lower realm? Yes. Hui Qing nodded. It suddenly became chaotic. There must be heavenly demons confusing people's minds. Chu Li frowned. Senior, do you have a solution? No. Hui Qing sighed and said helplessly, The Outland uses the foreign battlefield for defense. The lower realm doesn't have such conditions, so we can only ask the stargazing pavilion to cooperate with the enlightened masters to kill heavenly demons. Chu Li slowly nodded. It seemed like he had no other choice but to use this stupid method. Chapter 2053. After Chu Li was done with the arrangements, he headed to the Wang Qing courtyard and met Lu Songming in a huge residence. Xiao Kelly was there too, but he left, leaving the two sitting in the backyard. Lu Songming heard Chu Li and laughed. Young Master Chu, this idea is really, Chu Li smiled. Senior Lu, we don't need an elder's position. We just need an independent peak. Lu Songming thought about it. We really need to report this to the Cliff Master. I can't make the decision. After all, this is the first time two sects are accepting a disciple together. It's up to the cliff master to decide. Chu Li replied, Sure, just let me know when the time comes. All right. Lu Tsaming sighed. Young Master Chu, you're amazing. Normal people can't think of this. If it was him, he would only think of one or the other. He would not have thought of both sections. It would take a lot of courage to think of this. Chu Li said, I hope the cliff master will agree. I really don't want my wife to go against the Wangqing cliff in the future. Yes. Lu Tsaming sighed. Shao Qi was accepted not only because she was talented and cultivated to become a god, but also because Chu Li was an important factor. Once Shao Qi was accepted, it was the same as accepting Chu Li. If Shao Qi's sect was in trouble, how could Chu Li just stand by and watch? He had an excellent disciple who would definitely be a supreme rank master. There was also another top-notch supreme rank master. How could he miss such a good opportunity? Chu Li Fist saluted and left. The next morning, while Chu Li was cultivating, Lu Tsaming personally came to tell him that the cliff master had agreed to accept Shao Qi as a disciple together with the Taiqing sect. She was both a disciple of the Taiqing sect and the Wangqing cliff. She could stay in the Taiqing sect or the Wangqing cliff. After Chu Li sent Lu Tsaming off, he immediately returned to the Spirit Crane's peak of the 100,000 hills to find Shao Qi. Shao Qi and Chu Li returned to the fairy's capital to see Shao Shi. Shao Shi was a little haggard. Although she cultivated the Taishu scripture and her martial arts was extremely high, dealing with government affairs consumed her energy. It was useless no matter how strong her martial arts was. She could only recover by resting. Seeing that Shao Qi and Chu Li had returned, Shao Shi was finally relieved and went to sleep. When they woke up the next day, the three of them sat in the imperial garden and chatted. The heavenly demon's matter has been handled by Li Xinghe. Shao Shi scoffed. That fellow is lazy and slacking. I really want to cripple him. Chu Li smiled. I'll have a good chat with him. Shao Shi said. Without you as a deterrent, he's becoming more and more reckless. Chu Li nodded slowly. This was Li Xinghe's personality. It was difficult for him to truly respect someone. When Chu Li was around, he could still suppress him. Once Chu Li left, it would be difficult for Xiao Shi to suppress him with her intellect and lack of martial arts. Xiao Shi said hatefully, This guy is so annoying. Too bad we can't replace him. Li Xinghe was very useful. She had cultivated the Heavenly Heart Sutra, but she had yet to reach the realm of predicting good or bad luck. She still had to rely on Li Xinghe. Therefore, she hated Li Xinghe to the core and wanted nothing more than to kill him. However, she could only endure it. Chu Li said, Don't worry, I'll talk to them properly. That fellow, it'll be strange if he's useful. Xiao Shi curled her red lips. Chu Li warned Li Xinghe for a while, but with his personality, he would revert to his old ways after a while. Chu Li was very busy now. He could not always keep an eye on Li Xinghe. How about this? I'll teach you a heart technique. Chu Li pondered. The Heavenly Star Insight technique is better than the Stargazing Pavilion. If you can focus on cultivating it, with the Heavenly Heart Sutra as your foundation, it won't take long for you to master it. The Heavenly Star Insight technique. Xiao Shi frowned and shook her head. How can I have the time to cultivate it now? You can delegate 10% of the Purple Light Pavilion. Don't always think about controlling the world by yourself. You'll tire yourself out, Chu Li said. Xiao Qi nodded. Second eldest sister, don't think about everything being under your control. The world is so big that nothing is too strange. How can you control everything by yourself? It'll just be a waste of your energy. Xiao Shi scoffed. I'll try my best. Chu Li smiled. Xiao Shi's personality was hard to change, so it was useless to say anything. I'll be back soon. He waved his hand and disappeared. The next moment, he appeared next to Li Xinghe. Li Xinghe was sitting cross-legged on a treetop. His body moved up and down with the gentle breeze, looking elegant and calm. When Chu Li appeared out of nowhere, Li Xinghe was about to disappear in a flash, but Chu Li put a hand on his shoulder. Li Xinghe froze and smiled helplessly. Chu Li looked at him calmly without saying a word. Li Xinghe had goosebumps all over his body. He smiled bitterly. Brother Chu, you're back. Chu Li said, how leisurely. I'm deducing the heavenly secret. Li Xinghe quickly replied. He was at the peak where the stargazing pavilion was located. He looked down at the surrounding mountains, and his mind was broadened. Chu Li asked, did you manage to deduce anything? Li Xinghe frowned. The heavenly secret is unfathomable. I only managed to get a glimpse of it. It seems like there's an invisible force invading our world. But this force is formless and unpredictable. It's the heavenly demon, Chu Li said. That's impossible, right? Li Xinghe said in a low voice. He naturally knew what kind of existence the heavenly demon was. The heavenly demon disdained this world, or else this world would have been destroyed a long time ago. Chu Li slowly said, the heavenly demon has invaded, and there are already quite a number of them. Can you find them? Li Xinghe slowly shook his head. Chu Li took out a star stone the size of a finger and tossed it to him. Li Xinghe's eyes lit up as he quickly reached out to catch it. He was a little flustered as he asked in disbelief, this is for me? Chu Li said, with this, your stargazing technique will be more powerful, won't it? Of course. Li Xinghe exclaimed, what a pure star stone. As the leading disciple of this generation of the stargazing pavilion, he also had a star stone. Moreover, his star stone was bigger than a finger, but it was far less pure than this one. The purer a star stone was, the more powerful it was. Chu Li said, you can't sense the heavenly demon with this? Li Xinghe held the star stone in his hand and closed his eyes. After a while, he slowly nodded with a solemn expression. I can sense it. Chu Li smiled. That's good. Let Fa Yuan and Suen work with you to find the heavenly demon and get rid of them. Li Xinghe asked, can Fa Yuan and Suen handle the heavenly demon? Their descent will weaken their strength. As long as it's not the great heavenly demon, they can handle it, Chu Li said. That's good. This is a big problem. Li Xinghe sighed. Chu Li said, as a disciple of the stargazing pavilion, I can only face it head-on. The stargazing pavilion is highly respected in the Outland. Li Xinghe instantly smiled. Chu Li's expression turned serious. But if you bully the Empress Dowager, I'll have no choice but to turn against you. Fine, Li Xinghe said helplessly. She's too overbearing. Chu Li said, just follow her orders. That's two. Li Xinghe shook his head. As the future pavilion leader of the stargazing pavilion, he was unwilling to listen to the Empress Dowager's orders. However, the Empress Dowager had a backer. Since Chu Li was supporting her, he could only lower his head. Have you thought of how to deal with the heavenly demon? Li Xinghe asked. Only eliminating the heavenly demon that descended won't solve the problem. Just like the Asuras, although they could always be killed, they were endless and extremely troublesome. If the heavenly demon was included, the world would really be in chaos. Chu Li slowly nodded. Chapter 2054. He had already asked around for a long time, but he really couldn't find a way to defend against the sky demon. Even the realm beyond skies couldn't do anything about it, let alone the lower realm. The heavens beyond skies could use the alien battlefield to obstruct them. Within the defenses of the alien battlefield, void transference was not allowed. Therefore, these sky fiends were unable to directly pass through the alien battlefield and teleport into the heavens beyond skies. If he wanted to enter the Outland, he would have to use his light body technique to cross over. He would need to pass through the guarded city. Even if he was lucky enough to enter the Outland, he would not be able to cause any trouble. After all, the Outland was very powerful. However, the lower realm did not have such a unique defensive method, and it was impossible to set up a formation to block them. After thinking about it, the only way was to get rid of the heavenly demon from the root. There was no other way. It was just like how he had entered the realm beyond heaven in order to prevent Azura. Now that he had failed to achieve his goal, Azura's vitality had been damaged and needed time to recover. That was why the lower realm could still be defended. The heavenly demons were the real threat. What method? Li Xinghe asked. Chu Li shook his head. You don't have to worry about that. You should take care of the heavenly demons in this realm and stop them from acting recklessly. Li Xinghe nodded lightly and said, With this stellar stone, these extraterrestrial demons will have nowhere to hide. Be careful of the arrival of the great heavenly demon, Chu Li warned. Follow the enlightened master by your side before you act. Li Xinghe nodded. Chu Li waved his hand and left to return to Xiao Qi's side. The two of them returned to the outland the next day. Xiao Qi first paid a visit to her master, Hui Qing. Hui Qing still looked indifferent and did not give her any face. This made Xiao Qi sigh in relief. She had been worried that her master would blame her for being heartless, but she did not expect Hui Qing to approve of her actions. Then, Chu Li accompanied Xiao Qi and Hui Qing to the Forgetfulness Cliff. Under Lu Songming's arrangement, they stayed at the halfway point of a mountain. The scenery was picturesque, and the spiritual energy was abundant. It was indeed a good place for cultivation. Hui Qing and Xiao Qi continued to cultivate while Chu Li disappeared. The next moment, he suddenly appeared on Sun Mingyue's mountain peak in great light, surpassing region. Sun Mingyue was standing on a pavilion on a stone tower, her white robes fluttering in the wind. The moonlight shone on her face like water. It was bright and flawless, and her eyes were as deep as the abyss. When she saw Chu Li suddenly appear, she pursed her lips and smiled. Congratulations! Chu Li immediately knew that it was because of Xiao Qi. He smiled and asked, "Did something happen?" He originally wanted to go somewhere else, but he suddenly felt Sun Mingyue's summon, so he directly teleported here. With the 6 stone pagodas, it didn't take much effort for him to teleport, and he wasn't obstructed. Sun Mingyue sighed. "There's one thing," Chu Li said. "Tell me about it." "There's a traitor in great light, surpassing domain." Sun Mingyue sighed softly. Chu Li was shocked. "That's impossible, right?" Sun Mingyue nodded. "It's hard to believe, but it really happened. A disciple betrayed the great light, surpassing territory, and stole a scroll of the great light scripture." Chu Li frowned and said, "This is indeed an incredible matter. Have you caught up?" The great light scripture was the fundamental heart technique of the great light surpassing state. Once it was leaked, there would be endless trouble. Although it was impossible for others to truly become initiated just by relying on the great light scripture, it would be difficult for some people to find a way to restrain the great light scripture. That would be a great loss and would be of great importance. "No." Sun Mingyue shook her head slowly. Chu Li said, "Then I'll have to trouble you. You didn't ask me to help you chase after this guy, did you?" "Yes." Sun Mingyue sighed. "I've already asked a master from the heaven-shaking pavilion to help, but there's nothing we can do." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. "Even the heaven-shaking pavilion can't do anything? That guy has a treasure with him to cover his tracks, so we can't divine it." Sun Mingyue shook her head. "So, great light surpassing domain will definitely suffer this loss. Have you guessed which sect did it?" Chu Li frowned. It only took a moment to realize that this was not a simple individual act, but a premeditated betrayal. A treasure that could hide from the heaven-shaking pavilion and prevent the heaven-shaking pavilion from divining the mysteries of heaven was not something that just anyone could have. Only a powerful sect would have such a treasure. Sun Mingyue shook her head slowly. "How can I guess? Everyone looks like it, but I can't be sure." Chu Li sighed. "You asked me to come here because of this guy?" Sun Mingyue stared at him with her bright eyes. "I know you have a divine power that allows you to use objects to search for people." Chu Li laughed bitterly. "Even the heaven-shaking pavilion can't do anything about it. Do you think I can?" "That's not necessarily true." Sun Mingyue pursed her lips and smiled. Chu Li said, "Then let's give it a try." Sun Mingyue disappeared in a flash. When she reappeared, she was holding a piece of clothing for Chu Li. Chu Li took it. It was an emerald green gown. Looking at the gown, he could tell that the woman had a slender figure that was not inferior to Sun Mingyue's. "A woman?" Chu Li was surprised. Sun Mingyue nodded. "You think it's a man?" Chu Li nodded. "All right, let's give it a try." He first activated the Heavenly Star Insight to try to divine it, but nothing could be deduced. It was true that she had a treasure that covered the divine it, so it was useless no matter how hard he tried. He thought about it and activated the all-seeing divine power. He had a vague feeling. "Let's go," Chu Li said. Sun Mingyue's eyes lit up. Found it. Chu Li said, let's try. Sun Mingyue held his hand, and the two of them suddenly disappeared. The next moment, they appeared in a valley. The surroundings were quiet, and the moonlight turned cold. Sun Mingyue looked around, trying to figure out where she was. The next moment, Chu Li appeared in the forest halfway up the mountain. Then, he flashed again and went through the forest to a towering ancient tree. He pointed at the bottom of the tree. It's here. Sun Mingyue was surprised. Her bright eyes flashed, overshadowing the bright moonlight, and landed on a piece of new soil. She frowned. Is it really here? Chu Li said, the owner of the gown is dead. The all-seeing divine power originally could not find the dead. It searched through the aura of blood. After the soul was strengthened to its current realm, the all-seeing divine power became stronger, and the dead could not be hidden from it. Compared to the heavenly star insight, it had a single function, but it had a different function. Sun Mingyue frowned and looked around. TSS, 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 TSS. Dust flew under the towering ancient tree. An invisible force was blowing up the withered grass and soil. It was the Sword of Oblivion. The Sword of Oblivion had turned into a shovel, and it dug quickly. After a while, a corpse appeared. There was a string of prayer beads and a string of white bone beads on the corpse, and they shone faintly under the moonlight. Sarira? Sun Mingyue frowned. Chu Li's gaze fell on a string of white bone beads, and he pondered. The Sarira of a Buddhist monk indeed had the ability to conceal the secrets of heaven, but it could not completely conceal it. To be able to completely conceal the secrets of heaven, it was obvious that the string of white bone beads had another function. Sun Mingyue looked at the string of white bone beads and shook her head. She did not know what it was. Chu Li pointed at the corpse. The face was clear, and it was a beautiful woman, although she was not as beautiful as Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue said with a serious expression, "It's her." Chu Li sighed. That's troublesome. Chapter 2055. I want to bring him back. Sun Mingyue furrowed her brows and said, let's examine the wounds and determine which sect did it. Although it might not be of much use, at least we have a clue. Yes, Chu Li said, it's usually a case of framing. The elders in the realm will seriously consider it. Sun Mingyue shook her head and said, this has nothing to do with us. It's already hard enough to find her. As she spoke, she gently waved her hand, and the woman's corpse floated up. The two strings of beads floated into her hand, and she handed them to him. Chu Li took the two strings of beads and observed them carefully. There are 9 Buddhist beads, and all of them were Sarira, which made him speechless at the extravagance. Usually, it was already rare to have 1 Sarira in a Buddhist bead. This relic contained extremely pure Buddhist energy. The owner of this relic was an esteemed monk with a profound understanding of the Buddhist Dharma when he was alive. The other string of white bone beads was as warm as jade, carrying an ice-cold power. His mind couldn't help but become clear, and then he was filled with boundless courage. It was as if he could face all difficulties and dangers, fearlessly advancing forward. He could sense that this string of white bone beads was also a treasure that was not inferior to a Sarira. It's very likely to be the great heavenly demon bone, Sun Mingyue said. She placed one hand on a woman's corpse and said softly, let's go back. Let's go. Chu Li nodded. The two of them suddenly disappeared and returned to great light, surpassing domain. Sun Mingyue took the 2 strings of beads from Chu Li and disappeared again. Chu Li arrived at the pavilion on top of the stone tower. Facing the gentle night breeze, he thought about what he had seen earlier. After a quarter of an hour, Sun Mingyue suddenly appeared. She smiled and said, Master asked me to thank you. Chu Li shook his head. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to retrieve the Great Light Scripture. Those are just copies of Buddhist scriptures. Sun Mingyue said, it's not a big loss to us. It'll just be a little troublesome if it gets out. However, it's not the entire Great Light Scripture. It's only the 2nd volume, so it's not that serious. Chu Li said, I think there's something fishy about this. What exactly is that string of white bone beads? The great heavenly demonic orb, Sun Mingwe said. It's the orb left behind by the great heavenly demon when he passed away. I've never seen it before. Chu Li shook his head. Sun Mingwe smiled. The great heavenly demonic orb is even rarer than a Saraira. Its magical effects are not inferior to a Saraira. Chu Li said, since the great heavenly demonic orb is involved, could it be the heavenly demon's doing? That was all she had. Bring some personal belongings over, preferably hair and the like. Sun Mingwe frowned. You suspect that it's the work of the heavenly demon. Chu Li said, I have to be on guard. All right. Sun Mingwe nodded lightly and suddenly disappeared. After a while, she came back with a package and a small box. Opening the package, he found a few pieces of women's undergarments, a small box containing some jewelry, and a few strands of hair. Is this enough? Sun Mingwe asked. Chu Li nodded and took the clothes one by one, then checked the accessories and hair. His face was already a little pale. The all-seeing divine power consumed a lot of energy. After using it so many times, it was almost at its limit. Sun Mingwe looked at his expression and said worriedly, Let's try again tomorrow. One more day won't make a difference. Chu Li shook his head and continued to investigate. After a long while, his face turned pale. He closed his eyes and thought for a while before sighing. There are indeed two auras, not one person. Is it the heavenly demon? Sun Mingwe asked. Chu Li nodded slowly. Sun Mingwe's expression was solemn. The Great Light Scripture originated from Buddhism. Not only could it restrain Asuras, it could also restrain heavenly demons. Just like water and fire, if one's cultivation level was higher than the heavenly demons, they could suppress the heavenly demon to the point of suffocation. This was a great advantage. The heavenly demonic power was amazing. Even if the Deva's cultivation level was higher than the heavenly demons, they would be helpless against the heavenly demonic power. This was different for the disciples of the surpassing light state. Once their cultivation level was higher, they could completely suppress the heavenly demon. Once the Great Light Scripture was obtained by the heavenly demon and its weakness was discovered, the surpassing light state would be in a lot of trouble. Chu Li said, if other sects were infiltrated by the heavenly demon, it would be forgivable. But how could the heavenly demon infiltrate the surpassing light state without a trace? Is there nothing in the realm that can restrain the heavenly demon? There is. Sun Mingwe nodded lightly. It said that the surpassing light state's formation can distinguish the heavenly demon. Chu Li frowned. There's such a formation? The surpassing light state's formation was built by the ancestors' self-sacrifice. It contains the mighty power of the Great Light Scripture. Once the heavenly demon approaches it, it will be attacked by the Great Light Flame and burned to death, Sun Mingwe said. Chu Li said, even so, the heavenly demon still managed to infiltrate the formation. Sun Mingwe sighed. This is a very serious matter. I need to report it to the sect. Chu Li shook his head. It's useless. There's no evidence unless we find the heavenly demon. Can you find it? Sun Mingwe quickly asked. Chu Li nodded. I can try. Sun Mingwe quickly said. Then we'll look for it tomorrow. You should rest first. She looked at Chu Li's pale face and could not help but feel sorry for him. She wanted to hug him and comfort him. Chu Li smiled and nodded. All right, I'll look for it tomorrow. I'm more confident. The next morning, Chu Li woke up in the attic of the stone tower. The attic was elegantly built. As he lay on the bed, his ears were filled with the sounds of insects and birds in the forest. He felt exceptionally peaceful and slept soundly. Sun Mingwe did not sleep in the attic last night, so the two of them were safe. Chu Li was too tired last night, so he did not leave. Void diversion was very exhausting. Moreover, Xiaoqi was already in isolated cultivation, so it was not appropriate to disturb her. Thus, he simply stayed here. After one night, he had completely recovered and was full of energy. The air was exceptionally fresh. After he woke up, he went to Sun Mingwe's courtyard to wash up. After the two of them had breakfast, they suddenly appeared in a small town. The outland was bustling, but there were not many small towns like this. It was obvious that it was located in a remote area. They saw a middle-aged man in a residence in the small town. He was bedridden as if he was a candle in the wind and could die at any time. That's him. Sun Mingwei was surprised. The two of them were standing on top of the wall and looking into the bedroom through the open window. Chu Li nodded. Are you sure? Sun Mingwei said, This is a man. Chu Li said, It's him. Sun Mingwei hesitated for a moment before slowly nodding. Then take him down. She appeared in front of the bed in a flash and extended her hand to seal the acupuncture point of the middle-aged man. Her body tensed up in preparation for a counterattack. Bang! An invisible force attacked, and the middle-aged man's movements became sluggish. Sun Mingwei immediately sealed his acupuncture point, and his eyes widened in anger. Sun Mingwei turned to look at Chu Li and shook her head with a smile. She knew that this was the Sword of Oblivion. It was indeed powerful, especially when it was invisible and difficult to sense. It was the best way to sneak up on someone and never missed. After sealing the middle-aged man's acupuncture point, Sun Mingwei glanced around the room. Chu Li shook his head. Nothing. He knew what Sun Mingwei was looking for. He looked at the middle-aged man and asked calmly, Where's the Great Light Scripture? The middle-aged man could not speak at all as all his acupuncture points were sealed. Chu Li reached in his chest and pulled out a string of white bone beads. After putting it in his sleeve, he asked again, Where's the Great Light Scripture? The middle-aged man did not move. Chapter 2056. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. It's been taken away. This string of white bone beads could block his omniscient mirror. After he took it off, he could see into the middle-aged man's mind. He saw the middle-aged man pass the scripture of great light to a young man. The young man had a mediocre appearance and would not be noticed if he stood in the crowd. Even Chu Li could not recall who he was after taking a glance at him. It was clear that this appearance was not ordinary. It was a type of brilliant mental cultivation method that could conceal one's appearance. Sun Mingwei frowned. Now, the most important thing was the second volume of the Great Light Scripture. If the heavenly demon really obtained it, the threat would not be small. Moreover, the fact that the Great Light Scripture had been stolen by the heavenly demon was a great humiliation and a warning to the Great Light surpassing state. If the second volume was stolen, then what about the first, third, and the remaining volumes? If the other scrolls were to fall into their hands, it would be a disaster for Great Radiance surpassing state. Chu Li seemed to be able to read her mind and sighed. He was able to sneak into the Great Light surpassing state without a sound. It's obvious that he's cultivated the Great Light Scripture. Otherwise, he would have been easily discovered, right? You mean? Sun Mingwei's expression changed slightly. Chu Li nodded and said, It looks like your Great Light Scripture wasn't just copied. It's very likely that the heavenly demon has already obtained the first scroll. This is going to be a huge problem. Once the heavenly demon was able to learn the Great Light Scripture and fight with the disciples of the Great Light surpassing state, they would no longer be able to restrain them. Moreover, it would be very easy for them to infiltrate the Great Light surpassing state. In the end, they would be able to obtain all the martial arts of the Great Light surpassing state and find their weaknesses. They might even be able to innovate and become stronger. When she thought of this, Sun Mingwei felt a chill in her heart. Her expression was solemn. I must report this to the Realm Master. Can we get to the second volume? I'm afraid that's impossible. Chu Li shook his head. No matter how capable he was, there was nothing he could do if he had nothing to rely on. He couldn't just rely on deduction, right? Furthermore, the other party had a protective treasure that could conceal him from the heavens. He turned to look at the middle-aged man. Who's the one who's here to receive the Great Light Scripture? Great Sky Fiend? The middle-aged man stared at him angrily. Chu Li continued to ask, how did he send the Great Light Scripture back to the heavenly demonic realm? The middle-aged man's acupoints were sealed, and he couldn't move at all. He could only glare at him with hatred, as if he wanted to eat him alive. Chu Li asked, how do I enter the heavenly demonic realm? Heavenly demonic power? Then after entering the heavenly demon realm, I can do whatever I want? What forces do you have in the heavenly demon realm? Who is the realm master? He then patiently asked about some details, such as how many people were in the sky demon realm, How did the middle-aged man get through the foreign battleground to get here, and whether there were any secret passageways? As Sun Mingwe listened, her expression changed slightly. In the end, Chu Li asked him how he had copied the second volume of the Scripture of Great Light, which table, and when. In the end, he shook his head and sighed. Let's see if we can get it back. Sun Mingwe understood what he meant. He wanted to use the brush and ink to trace it. She asked hurriedly, will it work? Chu Li said, I can only give it a try. I've been tracking him through his blood energy, so it's hard to say. Then let's give it a try. Sun Mingwe quickly nodded. Bang! Chu Li suddenly stood in front of Sun Mingwe and pushed his palms forward. He took a step back and pressed himself on Sun Mingwe's body. Sun Mingwe held his hand, and instantly, their true, supreme, Vajra supreme scripture circulated and became one. Bam! Chu Li pushed out his right palm. A golden light flashed and collided with another invisible palm energy. Everything in the house was instantly crushed. Chu Li and Sun Mingwe stood firmly in the same place. The next moment, they grabbed the middle-aged man and disappeared. They appeared on top of the stone tower in surpassing light boundary. Chu Li threw the middle-aged man to the ground and said to Sun Mingwe, Go and report to the boundary master first. I'll be back soon. He was not afraid that the intruder would silence him, but he realized that the person who attacked him was not the heavenly demon. Clearly, the heavenly demon was not only disguised as a disciple of surpassing light boundary, but also had another identity. He used that identity to ask for help, and the person who attacked him was trying to save him. There were too many troubles involved, and he needed to explain clearly. Sun Mingwe hurriedly said, Be careful, don't advance recklessly. Chu Li nodded and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in the previous courtyard. Two elders were standing there, one with a yellow face and the other with a red face. They looked around with serious expressions, looking for clues. When they saw him suddenly appear, they waved their palms again. Chu Li saw that these two were supreme grade, so he guessed that they were elders of some sect. Bang! The three palm energies collided, and Chu Li took a step back. The yellow-faced elder frowned. Who are you? Chu Li said. Chu Li from the Rainmaster Palace. How dare you? The red-faced elder shouted. Our Skylight sect has nothing to do with the Rainmaster Palace. Why did you attack our people and even kidnap them? You've gone too far. Chu Li shook his head. Listen to me first. The two scoffed and glared at him. Chu Li's identity shocked them. Although the Rainmaster Palace was weak, it was still one of the 9 divisions. Their Skylight sect was an ordinary mid-tier sect, and the difference between them and the 9 divisions was like heaven and earth. They could not afford to offend them. Chu Li said, That person was the heavenly demon. We followed him here, so there's no mistake. You said it was the heavenly demon. So he is? The red-faced elder frowned. That was our Skylight sect disciple, Huang Qingji. Chu Li shook his head. We have no enmity with him, so why would we look for him? Is it really the heavenly demon? The yellow-faced elder frowned. Our Skylight sect shouldn't have been coveted by the heavenly demon, right? Chu Li said, The location is remote and not eye-catching. The two elders frowned, but did not refute him. The small town where their Skylight sect was located was indeed remote. Even if there were many people coming and going, they could not expand. Everyone liked to go to the Central Plains, to the bustling place. The young people here also liked to explore the Central Plains. They would only return to their roots when they were old. Chu Li said, If the two of you really don't believe me, you can go to Great Light Surpassing Boundary. The heavenly demon sneaked in a Great Light Surpassing Boundary, and we chased him here. If he wasn't the heavenly demon, why bother? The two fell silent. Chu Li was a supreme grade. He only needed one palm to deal with Huang Qingji. There was no need to go through so much trouble. They could not do anything if he ran away after killing him. They could not even catch up to him, and they did not know his identity. He just had to come back and tell them his identity, showing his sincerity. However, they were not willing to give up on the sect disciples just like that. Chu Li said, The two of you can go to Great Light Surpassing Boundary to find out the truth, but you must keep it a secret. After all, it is not a glorious thing to be infiltrated by the heavenly demon. All right, The two nodded slowly. Chu Li Fist saluted and suddenly disappeared. He appeared in the pavilion of the stone tower. After a while, Sun Mingwei returned with a solemn expression. Chu Li looked at her. Sun Mingwei said, "The identity has been verified. It is indeed the heavenly demon. We will start searching the boundary to see if there are any more heavenly demons." Chu Li said, "The brush and ink he used to copy the scriptures are on the third table in the fourth row. Go and get it. We will see if we can catch up to him." Sun Mingwei nodded and left again. After a while, she returned with the brush and ink and handed them to Chu Li. Chu Li pressed them and closed his eyes for a moment. He slowly shook his head. "There is no other way. You can't sense it?" Sun Mingwei asked. Chu Li sighed. "That guy is wearing a treasure to protect himself, so he can't sense it. This treasure was definitely better than the great heavenly demonic orb, or else it would not be able to block the all-seeing divine technique. Not only could it block the prediction of the heavenly design, but it could also block the all-seeing divine technique. This treasure was truly extraordinary." Chapter 2057. Sun Mingwei frowned and sighed. Maybe it's fate. Fortunately, there are only 2 volumes. Chu Li said, "Who knows if there's only the second volume left?" Sun Mingwei rolled her eyes and shook her head. "There's nothing we can do about it." Chu Li nodded. Even if he was powerful, he could not do anything about it. He knew that the most powerful thing in the Grandmaster was not martial arts, but treasures. These treasures often had miraculous effects that were even better than martial arts, and could turn the tables at critical moments. Even if he was powerful in martial arts and divine powers, he could not do anything about the treasures. He hated this feeling. Chu Li asked, "Is there nothing you can do in your territory?" These major sects had a long history and a deep foundation. No one knew how many trump cards they had. One trump card could turn the tables at critical moments, so they should not be underestimated. They definitely had a lot of treasures. Sun Mingwei sighed. Let the leaders worry about it. As the two of them were talking, Chu Li suddenly turned his head and looked down the mountain. A moment later, a middle-aged woman fluttered over and appeared in front of Sun Mingwei's courtyard. Chu Li and Sun Mingwei were already waiting in the courtyard. This middle-aged woman was elegant and charming, and her gaze could captivate one's soul. "Master Senior Meng." Sun Mingwei closed fist saluted. Meng Hanqing waved his hand lightly and smiled. "Mingwei, you've done a great job this time." Sun Mingwei said, "I still couldn't get the great light scripture back. It's good enough that you could do this." Meng Hanqing smiled gently. "I have to thank Chu Li this time." Chu Li closed fist saluted. "You're welcome, Senior Meng." Meng Hanqing said, "We have a light pearl that can sense the great light scripture." Chu Li pondered. Meng Hanqing smiled. "We also have a spirit-strengthening pearl." She took out a small box and passed it to Chu Li. "I'll lend you the light pearl and give you the spirit-strengthening pearl." Chu Li smiled. "How can I do that?" Sun Mingwei quickly asked. "Can you sense the great light scripture with the light pearl?" "Most likely." Meng Hanqing said, "If the light pearl doesn't work, we can only blame our bad luck." "Then give it a try." Chu Li understood Sun Mingwei's intention. It seemed that this spirit-strengthening orb was no small matter, and she was urging him to accept it. Meng Hanqing said, "White is the luminous pearl." Chu Li opened the small box. Inside were 2 pearls the size of longans. One was milky white like a pearl, and the other was as blue as the clear autumn sky. Meng Hanqing suddenly struck out with his palm, and the light pearl suddenly brightened, as if it had turned from a pearl into a crystal bead. It was clear and without any impurities, and it was still purifying, as if it was going to blend into the air. It gently floated up, left the small box, and flew into the air. Chu Li picked up the luminous pearl and sensed a strange power within it. This strange power was not strong, but it was as pure as hair. It was like silk and strands, and these strands of power seemed to lead to somewhere far away. Chu Li passed the small box to Sun Mingwei and took out a strand of hair from his inner pocket. He closed his eyes and sensed it. A moment later, he opened his eyes and nodded. "Found it." These strands of pure power led to somewhere, and these places were where the Great Light Scripture was located. Every volume of the Great Light Scripture was connected with a strand of power, and they were all copies of the Great Light Scripture. Chuli was secretly amazed. As expected of a large sect with a long history, they had such a treasure that could sense the location of every volume of the Great Light Scripture. With this in addition to his all-seeing heaven and earth skill, the two sensing powers overlapped, allowing him to clearly sense the location of the Great Light Scripture. This was because the other volumes of the Great Light Scripture were all within the Great Light boundary, and only this one was outside. Meng Hanqing was overjoyed, and he smiled like a flower. Then let's go. Chuli kept the luminous pearl in his inner pocket and reached out to hold Sun Mingyue's hand. Sun Mingyue held Meng Hanqing's hand, and the three of them suddenly disappeared. They appeared in a large city in a small alley. Through the observation of the omniscient mirror, this city was unusually prosperous, and there were many masters in the city. Looking further, one could see a continuous mountain range outside the city and a building halfway up on the mountains. Row upon row of pavilions and terraces, with overhanging eaves and hanging walls, revealed a sense of simplicity and vicissitudes. It was obvious that this building had experienced a long time. Chuli frowned and saw a basilica with the words "Like written on it. Meng Hanqing scanned the surroundings, leaped into the air, and quickly landed, saying softly, "This is Like City." Sun Mingyue said softly, "Like Palace, one of the 9 divisions?" The alley they were in was quiet and uninhabited, and the road was paved with white jade slabs, spotless. The surrounding buildings were medium-sized residences considered wealthy, but not the area where the wealthy resided, so it was clean and tidy. Chuli said, "We have to finish this quickly. Otherwise, there'll be endless trouble." Meng Hanqing said, "Like Palace is very overbearing. They don't care whether we're from the Great Light Surpassing State or not. As long as we fight in the city, we'll be violating their rules." Sun Mingyue looked at Chuli. "Why don't I inform them first?" Chuli asked. Meng Hanqing said softly, "That's not appropriate." Chuli nodded and said no more. He knew that the Great Light Surpassing State did not want this matter to be publicized, as it would damage their reputation. This is a great heavenly demon, but he can hide his cultivation level. Chuli frowned. Moreover, he has a treasure weapon. Once we fight, I'm afraid it'll take a long time and attract the people from Like Palace. How about this? You guys go back first, I'll deal with him. Sun Mingyue said, "Can you handle it? I can borrow the help of Like Palace." Chuli said, "I'm from the Rainmaster Palace. If the people from Like Palace come and see that it's a heavenly demon, they won't let it go, nor will they think much of it. If Sun Mingyue and Meng Hanqing were here, Like Palace would definitely be suspicious, but if he was here, Like Palace would not think that Great Light Surpassing State was here." Meng Hanqing took out a small sword that was about the length of a palm. "Looks like we can only use this." Meng Hanqing sighed. "Using it will cause a huge commotion. If we fail in one attack, Like Palace will definitely come, and we'll be in big trouble." She was a little hesitant. This move would offend Like Palace, and Like Palace's way of doing things was very likely to clash with Great Light Surpassing State. Chuli pondered and said, "How about this? I'll think of a way to lure him out." As he spoke, he walked out as if he was riding the wind. He was silent and extremely fast, and the 2 women followed closely behind him. Soon, they were out of the city gate and arrived at a forest 10 miles away from the city. Chuli said, "Senior Meng and Mingyue, please wait for a moment. I'll bring him here." Meng Hanqing wanted to ask how to lure him out, but Chuli waved his hand and left. Sun Mingyue whispered, "Master Senior, don't worry. He can do it." Meng Hanqing said, "These heavenly demons are all smart and powerful. They won't be fooled so easily." Sun Mingyue smiled. "Chuli must have a way." Meng Hanqing sighed. "I heard that his wife has cultivated to become a god." Sun Mingyue's smile faded. Meng Hanqing said, "Helping someone to become a god is a matter of life and death. He's taking such a big risk. It's obvious that he's deeply in love." Sun Mingyue smiled. Master Senior, don't worry. Chu Li and I are only close friends. Her identity also meant that they couldn't get married. Chu Li now had 2 wives. Chapter 2058. Chu Li had already obtained the secret code and communication method from the middle-aged man's mind, so he coughed lightly outside the residence and quickly left. He had already made a few secret marks. There was a middle-aged man in the residence who heard the coughing and frowned as he floated out. He saw the secret code at the corner of the wall and pondered for a moment before following the code and disappearing into the alley. Chu Li floated into the residence. There were no maids inside, and it was empty. He quickly entered the main hall and opened a stone slab at the corner of the wall before taking out the box beneath it. He quickly put the stone slab back and disappeared from the house before reappearing in the forest. The purple lacquer box was the size of a book and was unusually heavy. It was obvious that the item inside was not simple. He was not in a hurry to open the box to see the treasure inside. He wanted to take the opportunity to observe the great light surpassing state style. The 2 women suddenly became nervous when they saw him appear, but did not notice anyone following them. Sun Mingyue asked, "You didn't lure it over?" Chu Li replied, "I've lured it elsewhere. The item should be here." He patted the box in his hand. He didn't carry it with him. Sun Mingyue was surprised. Logically speaking, given how important the Great Light Scripture was, he should have kept it with him at all times, lest Chu Li took the opportunity to lure him away and steal it. Chu Li shook his head and handed over the box. Sun Mingyue asked, "You're not opening it?" Meng Hanqing smiled. "Chu Li, we only need to take the Great Light Scripture. The rest is naturally yours." Chu Li said, "Then I'll open it." The heavenly demonic orb in his precordium suddenly appeared. The heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique was activated, and the heavenly demonic energy in the box was instantly devoured. The box contained a mechanism that could only be opened by those who cultivated the heavenly demonic power. If anyone else opened it, it would explode. Not only would the box shatter, but the person who opened it would also be blasted to pieces. Chu Li's heavenly demonic power and heavenly demonic energy came from the same source, so it was indeed effective. He sensed that the danger had been eliminated and slowly opened the box. A thin booklet lay in the middle with a fist-sized statue on top of it. There was nothing else. Chu Li's heavenly demonic power immediately boiled and resonated with the statue. It was about the size of a fist, and it was completely black and lusterless. At first glance, it was impossible to see what was carved on it, but upon closer inspection, one could faintly see that it was a woman. Her facial features were beautiful and moving, and her eyes were gentle and charming. She was currently performing a strange dance, and it was exceptionally beautiful, as if she was floating in the air. With just a single glance, he couldn't help but want to keep looking. Moreover, the longer he looked, the more he felt that the woman in front of him had come to life. She was dancing gracefully in the air, her beauty indescribable. No wonder, when Meng Hanqing saw the statue, he sighed and said, "So, it's the demonic dancing statue, the demonic dancing form." Chu Li turned to look at her. Meng Hanqing gently waved his hand and said, "Don't touch it." Chu Li nodded. Although he did not sense any danger, he did not touch it. Instead, he tilted the box and pulled out the thin booklet from under the statue and handed it over. Meng Hanqing took the booklet and glanced at it with a smile. "This is indeed the 2nd volume of the Great Light Scripture." "Chu Li, thank you very much." Chu Li smiled. "Senior Meng, you don't have to be so courteous. What is this demonic dance?" Meng Hanqing passed the thin booklet to Sun Mingyue and muttered, "The heavenly demon has no form, and its transformations are unpredictable. It's impossible to guard against it." Chu Li nodded. However, the cultivation method of the heavenly demonic power isn't formless. The main idea of the heavenly demonic power is to achieve formlessness from having a form. Meng Hanqing said, "The 12 forms of the heavenly demon are the 12 main meridians of the heavenly demonic power. Each of the 12 forms has its own cultivation method." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He really did not know about this. He did not expect the great light surpassing state to know the heavenly demon so well. Meng Hanqing said, the demonic dancing form is one of the forms. The power of the demonic dancing form is amazing. It can devour all spirits in the world. Men, women, and even birds and beasts cannot resist it. Chu Li said, isn't this power invincible? Of course, you can be invincible if you cultivate it to the extreme, but it's not easy to cultivate the heavenly demonic power. Meng Hanqing shook his head and said, you can advance by leaps and bounds in the early stages, but it's difficult to advance in the later stages. It's better than the martial arts of our grandmasters, but no matter how powerful it is, it's difficult to perfect it. Chu Li sighed. It's the same principle in the world. Exactly, Meng Hanqing said. The demonic dancing form can restrain divination and senses. It seems like the demonic dancing form is a treasure. Unfortunately, the more treasured it is, the more one should not touch it. The majesty of the great heavenly demon is profound and cannot be blasphemed. Chu Li frowned. If that's the case, the heavenly demon in the demonic dancing form is hard to predict? Even the heavenly demon is hard to predict, Meng Hanqing said. It's impossible to guard against and very troublesome. Chu Li asked, is there no way to restrain it? Meng Hanqing sighed. Unless the top-notch masters of the heaven-shaking pavilion personally predict it, then it'll be possible. However, if these heavenly demons behave themselves and don't affect the general trend, it'll be hard to predict. Chu Li slowly nodded. No wonder the grandmasters were so afraid of the heavenly demons. There was indeed no good way. It was just like how humans treated incurable diseases. They could only defend themselves, but it was hard to cure them. Meng Hanqing said, our biggest weakness is that we don't know enough about the heavenly demon. Of the 12 forms of the heavenly demon, I only know the demonic dancing form and the demonic flying form. I don't know the rest. Chu Li sighed. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win. If this goes on, but there's no need to worry too much. No matter how powerful the heavenly demon is, as long as they do something that affects the general trend, they won't be able to escape the heaven-shaking pavilion's prediction. Even if they sneak in, they won't be able to do much, Meng Hanqing said. Chu Li slowly nodded but disagreed. If this went on, the heavenly demon would have a better understanding of the grandmasters, while the grandmasters did not know the ins and outs of the heavenly demon. In the end, the grandmasters' weakness would be grasped, and they might even surpass the grandmasters. When that time came, there would be no need for them to hide. They could just attack with an overwhelming force. Sun Mingwei said, Master Senior, let's go back and talk. Yes, let's go back and talk. Meng Hanqing nodded. The three of them suddenly disappeared and appeared outside Sun Mingyue's courtyard in the next moment. In the gazebo in the courtyard, Chu Li and Meng Hanqing sat down while Sun Mingyue brewed tea. Meng Hanqing took out a thin booklet and sighed. This matter is very serious, but it's also a good thing. Sun Mingyue said, it reminds us to be wary of the heavenly demon. Yes. Meng Hanqing sighed. In the past, there was a formation that prevented the heavenly demon from entering, but now they know that it's no longer possible. Can the heavenly demon really cultivate our great light scripture? Sun Mingyue frowned. The great light scripture and the heavenly demonic power are like fire and water. Chu Li said that Huang Qing's injuries might be because he cultivated the great light scripture. Meng Hanqing said, no matter what, the heavenly demon can sneak in. We need to deal with it properly, or else the great light scripture will be taken by the heavenly demon. That'll be troublesome. When she thought of this, she felt a sense of crisis. Suddenly, a woman in yellow fluttered over and knocked on the door outside the courtyard. Junior sister Sun. Sun Mingyue said softly, Senior sister who? Please come in. When the woman in yellow entered and saw that Meng Hanqing was also there, she quickly gave a fist salute with an excited look on her face. Meng Hanqing said, Yu Xian, what's the good news? The disciples of Taihao Peak have come to recruit junior sister Sun into Taihao Peak, the woman in yellow said excitedly. Oh, Meng Hanqing was surprised. Chapter 2059. Chu Li smiled. Are they really from Tai Hao Peak? The lady in yellow nodded. They're definitely from Tai Hao Peak. Meng Hanxing turned to look at Sun Mingwei and smiled. How lucky. Mingwei, you're about to enter Tai Hao Peak. Sun Mingwei asked. Is someone messing around? We'll know once we ask, Meng Hanxing said. Yu Xian, invite them over. Yes, Master Senior. The lady in yellow answered and left. Meng Hanxing sighed. I didn't expect to enter Tai Hao Peak. My trip to Wangqing Cliff wasn't in vain. Mingwei, remember not to talk nonsense. The disciples of Tai Hao Peak are more arrogant. Bear with it. Sun Mingwei asked. Master Senior Ming, have you met the disciples of Tai Hao Peak? Ever since she entered the Outland, she had not seen a single disciple of Tai Hao Peak. These disciples seemed to be very rare, and there was no news about them in the martial arts world. It was as if they were a hidden sect. Meng Hanxing nodded. I've seen them twice. Are they really arrogant? Sun Mingwei frowned. They're overbearing, aren't they? You'll know once you meet them. The disciples of Tai Hao Peak are all the same. Meng Hanxing shook his head. They still look down on us. Sun Mingwei looked at Chu Li. He waved his hand. I don't have much hope. Everyone in the Outland knew that his aptitude was not good. He only became a supreme grade because he was lucky. Otherwise, he would have been snatched away by other sects like Shao Qi. Therefore, he was not confident about entering Tai Hao Peak. Sun Mingwei rolled her eyes at him. If his aptitude was not good, no one else was. As the two were talking, the lady in yellow fluttered over. A tall and fat young man followed behind her. His chubby face was not handsome, but he had an unruly smile on his face. His eyes looked left and right, taking in everything around him. Suddenly, he saw Sun Mingwei, and his eyes suddenly lit up. It was as if the whole world had brightened up. He stared at Sun Mingwei, his eyes shining like torches. Sun Mingwei frowned at him with a solemn expression. The girl in yellow said with a smile, Martial Uncle Ming, junior sister Sun, this is young Master Li Yufeng, a disciple of Great Heaven Peak. Li Yufeng folded his chubby hands, laughed, and stared at Sun Mingwei with bright eyes. You are Sun Mingwei, Miss Sun? Sun Mingwei was displeased, but she maintained her composure and said faintly, Yes. Li Yufeng laughed and said, You really live up to your reputation. Your beauty is unparalleled, comparable to our senior sister Bai. Sun Mingwei said, You flatter me. Li Yufeng waved his fat hand and said, I'm absolutely not overpraising you. I've always spoken the truth. Junior sister Sun, from now on, you're our Great Sky Peak's disciple. As he spoke, he withdrew a white jade pendant from his pocket and tossed it to Sun Mingwei. This is our identity jade pendant, and you can enter Sky High Peak with it. Sun Mingwei reached out to take it. The jade pendant was only half the size of a palm. It was warm and soft, as if water was flowing within it. One side of the jade pendant was carved with a mountain peak, while the other side had her name written on it. How many people are we recruiting this time? Sun Mingwei asked. Li Yufeng said, 2, and both are women. One is you, junior sister Sun, and the other is junior sister Shao Qi. Shao Qi? Sun Mingwei looked at Chu Li in surprise. Li Yufeng nodded and said, You should know her. She's also an enlightened master who ascended from the lower realm. Chu Li's wife? Sun Mingwei asked. Li Yufeng hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yes, that junior sister Shao. But Chu Li is very lucky to have married a good wife. I heard that you know her, junior sister Sun? I do. Sun Mingwei nodded and glanced at Chu Li. Li Yufeng scoffed. It's best to cut off contact with him. Our Great Sky Peak has many outstanding talents. Why should we have any relationship with him? Chu Li coughed softly and did a fist salute. I'm Chu Li. Chu Li? Li Yufeng seemed to have just seen Chu Li and stared at him with wide eyes. You're that Chu Li who ascended from the lower realm? Chu Li nodded. That's me. Li Yufeng sized him up and shook his head disapprovingly. Chu Li smiled. What do you want to say, young Master Li? It's hard to live up to your reputation. I thought you were a handsome man. Li Yufeng shook his head. You're just average, about the same as me, but you're able to marry such a beautiful wife and have such a beautiful confidant. Chu Li said, "You flatter me." Li Yufeng scoffed. "Where's junior sister Xiao now?" "She's at the cliff of forgetfulness." Chu Li said, "I don't know if I have to cultivate in Great Sky Peak, or if I can choose any place to cultivate. Can I leave the mountain?" "You can't leave the mountain if you're not skilled enough." Li Yufeng scoffed. "Otherwise, wouldn't you be embarrassing Great Sky Peak?" Chu Li said, "If that's the case, young Master Li, you've finished your apprenticeship." "Of course." Li Yufeng nodded proudly. "Why, do you want to test my skills?" Chu Li waved his hand. "Forget it then. How long will it take?" He did not want to compete with Li Yufeng. Although Li Yufeng looked unsteady and somewhat frivolous, Li Yufeng's cultivation level was really amazing. It was not inferior to him. If they were to really fight, Chu Li might not be his match. Chu Li had a trump card, but how could Li Yufeng not have one as a disciple of Great Sky Peak? Li Yufeng scoffed. "That depends on each person's luck. Some can finish their apprenticeship in a year, some in 10 or 20 years, and some in more than 100 years. It all depends on the technique and advancement of each person." "Chu Li can't enter Great Sky Peak?" Sun Minghua asked unwillingly. Li Yufeng cast a sidelong glance at Chu Li and sneered. "Him? Dream on." Chu Li frowned. Sun Minghua's beautiful face darkened. She would not have minded Li Yufeng's words, but she could not stand it when she heard him say that about Chu Li. She said coldly, "If Chu Li's aptitude is not good, who else in the world has a better aptitude? His aptitude is just ordinary." Li Yufeng curled his lips. His comprehension might be slightly better, but comprehension alone is useless in our Great Sky Peaks martial arts. No matter how good his comprehension is, if his body's aptitude cannot keep up, it will be difficult for him to improve. Great Sky Peak cannot afford to lose face like that. Chu Li waved his hand and stopped Sun Minghua from speaking. If they continued, they would quarrel. It was rare for Great Sky Peak to recruit them, so Sun Minghua should enter. It was better not to cause any trouble. Sun Minghua pursed her red lips and took a deep breath. Her expression had already turned cold. Li Yufeng was secretly annoyed. Wherever he went, no matter how angry he was, no one dared to show him any attitude. This little junior sister, on the other hand, directly showed him attitude because of Chu Li. How infuriating! He was not angry at Sun Minghua. Even if a beauty was angry, she was still beautiful enough. He was extremely resentful towards Chu Li. He cast a sidelong glance at Chu Li and said, "Chu Li, why don't we have a spar?" Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "What's there to spar about? Young Master Li's cultivation level is amazing. I concede defeat." Li Yufeng grinned. "What a coward." Chu Li could not help but laugh. "Looks like young Master Li is forcing me to fight." Sun Minghua's beautiful face became colder and colder. She suddenly threw the jade pendant. Li Yufeng hurriedly reached out to catch it and looked at her in surprise. Sun Minghua said, "Please leave." Chapter 2060. Sun Minghua said slowly, "Great Dawn Peak is too high for me. I'll politely decline." "Mingyu!" Meng Hanqing cried out. Li Yufeng's eyes widened. It was his first time encountering such a situation. As long as she was accepted into the sect, they would endure it no matter how angry they were. They would want to work hard and find a chance to take revenge, but no one would refuse to enter the peak. Great Dawn Peak represented the world's #1 sect. Great Dawn Peak's martial arts were the world's strongest martial arts. It was a dream opportunity for any martial artist. As long as they entered Great Dawn Peak, it meant that they stood at the top of the world. No one could resist this. Chu Li frowned. Sun Minghua's move was too drastic. Great Dawn Peak was a rare opportunity. Not only did it mean powerful martial arts, but it also meant powerful connections and background. As long as she could enter Great Dawn Peak, there would be no more twists and turns in her position as the future-surpassing Light Realm's territory master. Li Yufeng hurriedly said, "Junior sister Sun, do you know what you're doing?" Sun Minghua said calmly, "I know, but I don't like your arrogance, young Master Li. It's as if everyone in the world has to beg Great Dawn Peak and can't wait to enter." Li Yufeng said, Just because my attitude is bad? Yes. Sun Mingwe nodded. Although surpassing light realm is weak, there's no need to enter Great Dawn Peak. You're doing this because of Chu Li, right? Li Yufeng scoffed and glanced at Chu Li. You're really capable. Chu Li, I'm a little impressed by you now. Chu Li's eyebrows relaxed, and he smiled. You flatter me. Aren't you going to persuade her? Li Yufeng said, she lost her bright future because of you. Do you really have the heart to do that? Chu Li said, Mingyu has her own decision. Why should I interfere? He was secretly anxious, but knew that he could not directly oppose it. Otherwise, Sun Mingwe would not be able to step down. It would seem that she was unreasonable, impulsive, and not suitable to be a territory master. There was no turning back. He could not regret it anymore. He had to turn the situation around. Ha! Li Yufeng laughed and shook his head. This is the first time I've encountered something like this. I'm impressed. Chu Li, I'm impressed. Chu Li shook his head and said, Ming, you didn't do this because of me, but because of you. You look down on great light, surpassing land, and everyone else because of the arrogance of Great Clarity Peak. Great Clarity Peak is not the superior of Great Light Saint Land. Ah, so it's my fault. Li Yufeng shook his head and grinned. Meng Hanqing was extremely anxious. If he really missed this great opportunity, it would be too late for regrets. He could not help but glare at Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe, on the other hand, looked at Li Yufeng indifferently and calmly. Sun Peak was indifferent. After entering the great light surpassing realm, she was relieved of a heavy burden. She felt relaxed and had no desires. She felt that it was good to be like this. She didn't want to be a realm lord. It was incomparably troublesome and not free. She could live freely with her current cultivation level. There was no need for her to become stronger. She did not want to be a territory master. It was troublesome and not free. Chu Li said, Young Master Li, Taihao Peak wants to recruit Mingyu into the sect. As a disciple, you have to complete this task. If you fail to complete it, you'll offend Mingyu and cause her to be unable to enter the sect. I'm sure you'll be punished, right? Oomph. Li Yufeng sneered. Are you threatening me? Chu Li shook his head and said, You've really embarrassed Taihao Peak by doing this. It's indeed your fault. Chu Li was sure that Li Yufeng was afraid of both sides. If he was not afraid, he would have left. I'm arrogant, but you're more arrogant than me, Li Yufeng said coldly. He was in a difficult position. If Sun Mingwe refused to join the peak, he would have made a big mistake. He would be too useless if he messed up such a small matter. He was most worried about Shao Qi. If Sun Mingwe did not join, Shao Qi would refuse too. They were both Chu Li's women. If that happened, he would be punished even more. He would become a joke in peak and would never be able to lift his head again. In the eyes of the sect's elders, he would also have to bear an embarrassing and heavy responsibility. That would be the end of him. Chu Li said, I have an idea. Say it. Li Yufeng gritted his teeth. Chu Li smiled and said, Since young Master Li wishes to spar with me, then let's spar. If you win, Mingyu and my wife will enter Taihao Peak, but if you lose, they won't enter Taihao Peak. If they don't enter the peak, I think it'll be a heavy blow to the reputation of Taihao Peak. The legend of Taihao Peak will be destroyed from then on, right? Li Yufeng asked. Chu Li, are you threatening me? Chu Li smiled and nodded. Yes. Li Yufeng gritted his teeth. How dare you? Chu Li shook his head. If you can't even beat me, what's the point of joining Peak? All right. Li Yufeng slowly said, Let's spar. Sun Mingwe asked, Why fight him? Chu Li shook his head and smiled. I want to see Peak's martial arts and see if it's worth it. Come on then. Li Yufeng scoffed. Watch my palm. He slammed his palm down. His chubby palm was like a mountain pressing down on Chu Li. It was huge and heavy. It was so imposing that Meng Hanqing could not help but take a step back. The girl in yellow was even worse. Her breathing seemed to have stopped. Sun Mingyue's white robe fluttered. She did not retreat and stared at Li Yufeng's palm. She was shocked. She did not expect Li Yufeng to be so arrogant and frivolous. His cultivation level was so shocking that it was beyond her imagination. It seemed that the disciples of Peak lived up to their reputation. No matter how weak they were not ordinary supreme celestials. Bang! Chuli met it with the supreme Vajra palm. When the two palms collided, there was an earth-shattering explosion. Both of them took 2 steps back. Their clothes fluttered in the wind. The flowers, grass, and soil around them tumbled like waves rushing into the distance. The ground was bare, leaving only hard rocks. The rocks of the mountain they were on were hard. After a thick layer of soil was scraped away, the rocks of the mountain were exposed. "What martial arts is this?" Chuli asked. Li Yufeng scoffed. "Great Sumeru palm." His palm was like Mount Sumeru. One palm could shake the 9 rivers. Chuli nodded. "It's a good martial art. Watch my palm." He slammed another supreme Vajra palm. These 2 supreme Vajra palms did not show any abnormalities. They were stimulated by his own inner energy. He did not use external spiritual energy. It was purer and more powerful, but it was silent. Bang! Li Yufeng slammed another supreme Vajra palm. It made a loud noise, and the ground seemed to shake. Meng Hanqing shook his head. It was understandable that Li Yufeng was so powerful, but he did not expect Chu Li to be so powerful. The great light surpassing state did not pay enough attention to him and underestimated him. Bang, 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 bang. The loud sounds of thunder connected. The 2 of them exchanged more than 20 palm strikes. Around them, more than 20 towering ancient trees fell. They were all uprooted. It was a shocking sight. Bang! Chuli flew away. When he landed, he gave a fist salute. "I've lost." Li Yufeng stared at him with a complicated gaze. Chapter 2061. Li Yufeng knew that Chu Li had not used his full strength, and his emotions were inexplicably complicated. Both of their cultivation levels were about the same, so if they were to really fight it out, it would be hard to tell who would emerge victorious. He was a disciple of Tai Hao Peak, so he had a unique ultimate skill as his trump card. However, it was impossible for Chu Li to not have a trump card, as he was able to make it this far. It was obvious that Chu Li was doing this on purpose. He did not know whether he should be grateful or resentful, but his fighting spirit was high. This time, it involved a mission, so he could not afford any more twists and turns. Next time, he must fight to his heart's content and see who is stronger. Chu Li smiled and said, "Don't think that I'm letting you win on purpose. I really can't win. My cultivation level is about the same as young Master Li's, and Tai Hao Peak's martial arts are amazing. I'm still going to lose in the end, so I might as well admit defeat now." Sun Mingyue snorted and said, "You recognized him too quickly. Why waste your time?" Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "It's a pity that I'll have to force you to enter Tai Hao Peak." Sun Mingyue said, "Let's go in. We can cultivate no matter where we go." Meng Hanqing hurriedly said, "Mingyue, don't spout nonsense. This is a rare opportunity. Once you enter Great Sky Peak, you must cultivate well. Don't embarrass our light, surpassing domain." Sun Mingyue nodded. Meng Hanqing heaved a long sigh of relief. Fearing that there would be more changes, he raised his voice and said, "Then it's settled. Young Master Li, why don't we go to the front and have some tea? We can do our part as hosts." "There's no need. I still have to look for Junior Sister Xiao," Li Yufeng said. He tossed the jade pendant to Sun Mingyue as he spoke. Sun Mingyue took it. Chu Li said, "It's better to keep this a secret. If word gets out, everyone won't be happy." "Don't worry," Li Yufeng snorted and said, "Once they enter Great Heaven Peak, they are one family. I won't give them any trouble." Chu Li smiled. "Of course, I believe in Master Li's magnanimity." Li Yufeng said, "Farewell." After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for anyone to speak and floated away, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Meng Hanqing heaved a long sigh of relief and glared fiercely at Sun Mingyue. You're always messing around," Sun Mingyue said. "Martial uncle, actually, it doesn't matter if we go to Great Heaven Peak or not. Great Heaven Peak isn't that godly." "Nonsense," Meng Hanqing snorted and said, "The strength of the Great Heaven Peak's martial arts is beyond your imagination. It's said that it's a martial arts from beyond the heavens. If you miss it, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." The Book of Indifference is also a martial art from beyond the heavens, Sun Mingwe said. I've already learned it, I just need to slowly comprehend it. Meng Hanqing looked at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. The sword of indifference that he had comprehended did not belong to the cliff of indifference. It was obtained from the heavenly Book of Indifference, so he could impart it to whoever he wanted. Meng Hanqing sighed and shook his head. It's really, forget it. You should prepare yourself and report to Titanic Peak as soon as possible. Once you enter Titanic Peak, your horizons will be greatly broadened, and it will be extremely beneficial to the cultivation of the Great Light Scripture. Once we enter Great Heaven Peak, if Great Heaven Peak has an order in the future, will we listen to it or not? Sun Mingwe frowned. Meng Hanqing said unhappily, even if we do not enter the Great Heaven Peak, we cannot disobey the orders of the Great Heaven Peak. Sun Mingwe nodded slowly. All right, let's head there as soon as possible. The girl in yellow looked at Sun Mingwe enviously. This was truly a meteoric rise. It was truly enviable. Chu Li watched as they left, then looked at Sun Mingwe and shook his head. I'll leave first. When are you leaving? In a few days, Sun Mingwe replied. Chu Li nodded. Let's go to Like City first and capture the great heavenly demon. What are you planning to do? Sun Mingwe asked. She was unusually sharp and felt that it was strange when Chu Li asked about the great heavenly demon so carefully. She knew that Chu Li's ability was ever-changing, which was similar to the great heavenly demon. She scoffed. Are you planning to enter the heavenly demon realm? Chu Li nodded slowly. Then you must be careful, Sun Mingwe said. The heavenly demon realm isn't the great light surpassing state. It's an existence similar to the Grandmaster's realm. She was very confident in Chu Li. His intelligence and martial arts were top-notch, and he was meticulous. If he really infiltrated the heavenly demon realm, it would be difficult to find any flaws, just like when he transformed in a Zhao De. Chu Li said, capture the great heavenly demon and see if I can transform into him. Then let's go, Sun Mingwe said. Don't attack him directly. It's better to outsmart him, Chu Li said. Let's do this. After a brief discussion, they suddenly disappeared and reappeared in the forest outside Remnant City. This forest was dozens of miles away from the forest they had stayed in before and even further away from Like City. Even if they attacked, they would not be discovered. At this moment, a middle-aged man stood in the forest. His face was sallow, but he still looked handsome. It was obvious that he had been a handsome man when he was young. He stood under a tree with his hands behind his back. There was a secret mark on the tree. Sun Mingwe floated down. She wore a snow-white robe, and a white veil covered her face. She said, the heavenly venerable's creation, the eternal glorious inner demon, the middle-aged man said. Sun Mingwe said, I've escaped and will never return to great light surpassing state. She had disguised herself as the heavenly demon who had infiltrated great light surpassing state. The heavenly demon's ever-changing form had become the best cover. She only needed to say the correct secret signal. The middle-aged man nodded. It's good that you escaped. Where are you going next? Sun Mingwe said, 10,000 Sword City. It's hard to enter 10,000 Sword City. The middle-aged man frowned. I want to take back the heaven-killing sword, Sun Mingwe said slowly. I heard that the heaven-killing sword is in Chu Li's hands. The middle-aged man said, it's hard to take it back from Chu Li, Sun Mingwe said. Then I'll use 10,000 Sword City to take it back from Chu Li. I'll think of a way to steal it. Good idea. The middle-aged man nodded. Be careful. Sun Mingwe nodded. She looked up at the dense forest and sighed. The middle-aged man said, homesick. Sun Mingwe shook her head without saying a word. The middle-aged man also looked disappointed. He was obviously homesick too. Although the Outland was good, it was not as good as his hometown. Bang! A black light suddenly surged around the middle-aged man. The black light exploded and his body froze. Sun Mingwe slid forward and sealed his acupuncture point. Chu Li appeared behind him in a flash and sealed his acupuncture point again. He let out a long sigh. His face was deathly pale. In that strike, just now, after using the sacrificial divine technique, he used the thunder sword of God execution and the sword of indifference at the same time. Finally, he succeeded in one strike. Otherwise, it would have been very troublesome to fight, and he might have really alerted the Like Hall. "Are you okay?" Sun Mingwe looked at him. Chu Li shook his head. "Let's go." The two of them suddenly disappeared with the middle-aged man. A moment later, two figures flashed by. They glanced at the forest and disappeared. It was the disciples of the vacancy hall who came to check. The two of them dragged the middle-aged man to the peak of a mountain. There were 6 stone towers and a wooden house on the peak. The wind howled. Although it was blocked by the forest, the temperature was still extremely low. Chu Li put the middle-aged man on the bed in the wooden house and pressed his palm on the man's chest. With a thought, the heavenly demonic orb appeared. The heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique was activated. In the blink of an eye, the middle-aged man's demonic technique was devoured and returned to the heavenly demonic orb. Then, the heavenly demonic orb disappeared again. Chu Li looked at the middle-aged man. His eyes were still open, and he looked at Chu Li calmly. Sun Mingwe said, "Seems like he's not an ordinary person." Chu Li nodded. Chapter 2062. He flipped through the secret manual and raised his eyebrows as he looked at the middle-aged man. Sun Mingwe glanced at the cover of the secret manual. Heavenly Demon Hoop. Chu Li quickly flipped through it and passed it to Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe took it and flipped through it casually before shaking her head. "It's exquisite, but without the heavenly demonic power, it doesn't seem that powerful. Don't cultivate the heavenly demonic power." Of course, the heavenly demon hoop is indeed exquisite. Chu Li exclaimed. "Looks like the heavenly demonic martial arts is very prosperous." Sun Mingwe said, "If it wasn't prosperous, it wouldn't be so difficult to deal with." Chu Li had already imprinted the heavenly demon hoop into his mind and began to deduce and understand its essence. The heavenly demonic power that he knew was different from the heavenly demons. Without the heavenly demonic inner energy, he dared not take the risk to cultivate this heavenly demonic power. If he could not abolish it after cultivating it and truly turn into a heavenly demon, it would not be worth it. Although the life and death scripture could hide his martial arts and allow him to reincarnate, the heavenly demonic power was extremely overbearing, so he dared not cultivate it. It would be over if the life and death scripture could not deal with the heavenly demonic power. If he wanted to enter the heavenly demonic boundary, he did not have to cultivate the heavenly demonic power. He could impersonate it using the cloud slashing power. The heavenly demonic power had 2 characteristics. One was to strengthen the body, and the other was to engulf. His original heavenly demonic power strengthened the body, so he could impersonate it. The cloud-slashing power's inner energy had the ability to engulf and was extremely overbearing. It would engulf any inner energy it saw and would not allow the existence of a second inner energy. Therefore, it was difficult to see through the cloud-slashing power when impersonating the heavenly demonic power. Moreover, his cloud-slashing power was at a high level. Coupled with the heavenly demonic scripture, it was foolproof. If it really did not work, he could use the heavenly demonic spirit devouring technique. This was the true heavenly demonic ultimate technique with unparalleled devouring power. The Sky Devil Hoop was a method of exerting force. The inner force was like a circle, like a seal, and like a release. It was similar to the meaning of Tai Chi that he had seen in his previous life. It was also similar to his Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture, so he could comprehend it very quickly. The heavenly demon hoop was the middle-aged man's secret cultivation manual. So if he wanted to impersonate him, he would naturally have to cultivate the heavenly demon hoop well. He then looked at the ebony waist token. There was only the word Wu written on it, and there were some strange patterns on the other side. The material of the token was strange. It seemed to be made of wood, yet it also seemed to be made of iron. It was hard and heavy, yet also gave off a sense of elegance. It was difficult to determine what material it was made of. Driving it with his internal energy, he found that it was incredibly hard. Chu Li smiled when he saw the string of prayer beads. A great celestial demon actually carried a string of Buddhist beads with him. Furthermore, There was a Buddhist relic bead hidden in it. It was a great irony. He thought about it and sighed. Amazing! Relics were precious items, and not just anyone could use them. This great sky demon was probably not a small fry either. He put the Buddhist beads on his wrist and looked down at the middle-aged man. He sighed. Which sect are you from? What's your name? What's your original appearance? As he spoke, he suddenly patted the middle-aged man's body a few times, especially on his chest. After a few pats, Big Sky Demon's face changed. A look of hatred appeared on his face, as if he wanted to eat him. Chuli breathed a sigh of relief. This heavenly demonic power was temporarily crippled by him. Fortunately, he had made it in time. Just now, the Great Sky Demon had almost used the heavenly demonic disintegration technique. If she had used it, her body would have exploded and formed a powerful force that would have severely injured him and Sun Mingwei. He finally understood why the heavenly demonic power was so overbearing that it was difficult to cripple it. This was because the heavenly demonic power originated from one's vital energy. As long as one's vital energy still existed, the heavenly demonic power would gradually recover unless one died. Chuli had only crippled the heavenly demonic power for a short period of time. Whenever he used the heart technique of the heavenly demonic power, his vital energy would continuously be converted into the heavenly demonic power, and his cultivation level would slowly recover. Without the protection of the heavenly demonic power, the Great Sky Demon's mind finally lost its defenses and appeared before him. Chuli continued to ask, "Who are you impersonating? What's your mission here? When do you plan to go back?" He continued to ask questions, but the Great Sky Demon's acupuncture points were sealed, so he could not answer him. He could only stare at him with hatred. He did not seem afraid of death at all. It was obvious that he knew his fate was to die. Chuli appeared at one of the peaks of the cliff of forgetfulness. Hui Qing and Shao Qi were practicing their swordsmanship on the peak without moving. The leaves around them rustled and fell. They were crushed into powder by an invisible force. When Chuli appeared, Shao Qi appeared in front of him in a flash. Meanwhile, Hui Qing stood on a treetop and continued to practice her swordsmanship. The two of them went to a gazebo on the mountainside and sat down. The mountain breeze was gentle and refreshing. "Do you know?" Shao Qi asked. "Tai Hao Peak wants to recruit me." Chuli smiled and held her hand. "That's great news." Tai Hao Peak. Shao Qi shook her head. "I didn't expect Tai Hao Peak to recruit me. Do I really want to go?" "Of course." Chuli smiled. "It's such a good thing. How can I refuse it?" Shao Qi nodded. She had heard from Hui Qing about Tai Hao Peak's status and martial arts. "I wonder if Tai Hao Peak will have the Heaven Scroll of Forgetfulness," Shao Qi said. She felt that cultivating the Heaven Scroll of Forgetfulness was excellent. It was a martial art from beyond the Outland, which was better than the current Grandmaster's martial arts. Its power was amazing. As long as she could comprehend and cultivate it, she would be able to do whatever she wanted in the Outland. Chuli said, "I'm afraid it's unlikely. There are great benefits in going to Tai Hao Peak, especially with a backer. No one will dare to touch you in the future." Shao Qi pursed her lips and smiled. "You won't have to worry about it anymore." Chuli smiled. "I still need you to take care of me." Shao Qi chuckled. Chuli pondered for a while and told her about his plan to go to the heavenly demonic realm. Shao Qi would be worried, but if he did not tell her, she would inevitably get angry and lose trust in him. He would not hide such an important matter since they were a couple. "Are you confident?" Shao Qi sighed. Her cold eyes were filled with helplessness. Her husband was not a peaceful person. He had to step on the tip of a knife at every moment. Fortunately, he had a mystical technique to protect himself, so he could avoid danger every time. Chuli smiled. "Actually, I'll be going there secretly this time. I'll completely treat myself as a heavenly demon and won't think about stealing information. There's no flaw at all. Besides, heavenly demons won't be on guard against this, so it won't be dangerous. In short, be careful." Shao Qi nodded. Chuli said, "Be careful when you go to Tai Hao Peak too." Shao Qi smiled. "I can handle it." Chuli nodded. He held her hand tightly and pulled her into his arms. His mind was calm, as if he had the whole world in his hands. He was also very confident in Xiao-Qi. She was very sharp and could see through other people's thoughts. She would not be at a disadvantage. The next day, he returned to Rainmaster Town. He wanted to report to Shueliyu that he needed to go into isolated cultivation for a year to prepare for the heavenly demonic realm. Shueliyu was dressed in a light yellow gown. Her bright face was covered with a layer of worry. She was playing the guzheng, and the faint sound was filled with a sense of loss. When she saw him, the sound of the guzheng stopped. "My lady," Chuli gave a fist salute. Shueliyu said, "You know about the disciple recruitment at Taihao Peak, right?" Chuli nodded and looked embarrassed. Shueliyu scoffed. "We didn't make it." Chapter 2063. Are we that bad? Shueliyu scoffed. Chu Li shook his head. "My aptitude is average. It's understandable that Taihao Peak doesn't like me." You're the first person to comprehend the heaven scroll of indifference in thousands of years. Taihao Peak doesn't like your aptitude. They're really, Shueliyu sneered and said with jealousy and mockery. "Fortunately, one of them is your wife and the other is your confidant." Interesting. She pursed her lips and chuckled. Chuli did not know how he felt when the two women got together and became fellow disciples. He must have been panicking beyond belief. Chuli sighed in relief. It seemed like Shueliyu did not have high hopes, so he was not too disappointed. "Are you going to isolate yourself because you're afraid they'll catch up?" Shueliyu asked. Chuli nodded. Shueliyu said, "All right, I'm going to isolate myself too. You go ahead." Chuli did not expect her to agree so readily. Shueliyu noticed his hesitation and scoffed. "Father will be out soon to guide me in my cultivation. He'll be concentrating on his cultivation for a while and won't have time to go out. You can go isolate yourself." Chuli smiled. Shueliyu grinned. "Are you worried?" "I'm fine." Chuli was a little uneasy. He knew what Shueliyu was joking about. He should be worried when Xiao-Qi and Sun Mingwei got together. Fortunately, the two girls had extraordinary breadth of mind and wouldn't fall out with each other. They would only compete in secret and cultivate diligently. This was actually a good thing for them to improve. Both of them had a temperament of having no desires. Xiao-Qi had always been indifferent and quiet. Now that Sun Mingwei had been relieved of the heavy burden of being the bishop, she had completely relaxed. She was no longer as ambitious as before, so she needed this kind of competition. "Aren't you afraid they'll fight?" Shueliyu asked. Chu Li shook his head. "No, you have a good eye for women," Shueliyu said. "Many people will be jealous." Chu Li smiled and nodded. Shueliyu said, "But it'll be embarrassing if a man like you can't compare to the two women. You'll have to isolate yourself." She fully understood Chu Li's urgency to isolate himself. He wanted to improve his strength so that his women would not surpass him and protect his dignity as a man. She would not stop him, or they would become enemies. Moreover, he had already made such a great contribution. It was time for him to take a break. Chuli gave a fist salute in gratitude. He silently left the demon-suppressing city and entered the foreign battleground. Through Wu Yuanxi, the great celestial demon, he knew that it was easy to get out of the demon-suppressing city, but difficult to enter. It was far less heavily guarded than he had imagined. If one wanted to enter the extraterrestrial battlefield, they would turn a blind eye to it. If one wanted to die, they could do so at will. However, if one wanted to enter the demon-suppressing city, there were layers upon layers of defense. From time to time, there would be daring celestial beings or celestial beings who were obsessed with wealth, or celestial beings who pursued the path of power, would sneak into the foreign battlefields to temper themselves, improve their cultivation and vision, and break through bottlenecks. The extraterritorial battlefield was open to sects other than the 9 divisions once every 10 years. Apart from that, the sect's disciples were forbidden from going to the extraterritorial battlefield. However, the sect's personal behaviors were not very strict. Chuli easily left the demon-suppressing town and entered the extraterritorial battlefield. His entire body tensed up as he hurried into the distance. On the way, he passed through 9 mountain ranges. Once he entered the extraterritorial battlefield, he could not shift through the void. An invisible force had locked the void, so he could not travel at will. He could only use his light body technique to move quickly. His feet were almost off the ground as he sped forward as if he was stepping on 2 rings. This was the magical effect of the heavenly demon hoop. His energies seemed to be sealed and formed into rings that were solid, which made his body movement technique extraordinarily fast. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, he avoided bystanders in advance. Some were heavenly demons, while others were celestial beings. Occasionally, he saw heavenly demons and celestial beings fighting, but he did not attack. He simply avoided them and walked forward. 10 days later, he finally passed through the extraterritorial battlefield and arrived in front of a towering city. This huge city was 5 times the size of the demon-suppressing city. The architectural style was simple and magnificent. Whether it was the houses or the streets, they were vast and mighty. It was completely different from the exquisite and luxurious buildings in the Grandmaster's boundary. The prosperity and liveliness of the city far surpassed that of the demon-suppressing city. The demon-suppressing city was the first barrier against the heavenly demons. Deep down, the citizens were worried. Unless they had no other choice, they would not stay in the demon-suppressing city. It was too dangerous. The huge city of the heavenly demons in front of him was called Distant Wind City. It was extremely prosperous. The heavenly demons seemed to treat the extraterritorial battlefield as a treasure. The heavenly demons who came to the extraterritorial battlefield were all excited. Distant Wind City was also a city full of opportunities. The heavenly demons were humans. The residents of Distant Wind City were no different from the celestial beings. The clothes they wore were mainly simple and plain. They were not as luxurious and exquisite as the celestial beings. Chu soon had a feeling that the celestial beings lived in the city while the heavenly demons lived in the villages. It was a lot more backward. It was easy to enter Distant Wind City. He directly flashed his waist tag, and the city guards waved their hands and let him in. These city guards had high cultivation levels. They had reached the 1st rank. They wore dark armor and looked solemn. Their bodies were full of murderous intent. After Chu entered the city, he first walked around the streets. He walked through the bustling crowd and felt the liveliness and vitality of the place. It looked no different from the Grandmaster's boundary. At this time, he was dressed in a green robe and had transformed into a handsome young man. It was Wu Yuanxi's original appearance. Wu Yuanxi had become a great heavenly demon in his 20s. He was a famous young talent. In the evening, he did not look for an inn. Instead, he went straight to a majestic house. In front of the house, there were 2 stone statues of strange beasts. They looked ferocious and were full of murderous intent. Chu saw blood clouds floating above the 2 stone statues. It was as if dark clouds were shrouding them. It was obvious that these 2 stone beasts contained a huge amount of energy. They were the pivots of a formation. 2 young men stood beside the stone statues. When they saw Chu, they were stunned. They quickly gave him a fist salute. "Senior Brother Wu." Chu nodded and strode inside. One of the young men ran ahead to report. Just as Chu went around the screen wall, he saw a middle-aged man with 2 young men rushing out to greet him. He gave him a fist salute and laughed. "Junior Brother Wu." Chu gave him a fist salute and used the omniscient mirror to observe him. He said, "Senior Brother Pu." This middle-aged man was called Pu Yuan-tu. He was the courtyard master of this side courtyard. In the Flying Heaven sect, he was considered Chu Li's senior brother. He was not a master. They were just peers. Pu Yuan-tu had thick eyebrows and big eyes. He walked with a majestic aura. He was smiling as if he was very happy. Pu Yuan-tu laughed. "Junior Brother Wu, you're finally back. Congratulations." "I'm back. Senior Brother Pu, you must be disappointed," Chu Li said. "Haha, Junior Brother Wu, what are you saying?" Pu Yuan-tu laughed and shook his head. "I'm more than happy. Please come in." He turned around and led the way. They arrived at the martial arts field. There were more than 20 people training there. When they saw Chu Li, they stopped and gave him a fist salute. Chu Li walked with his hands behind his back. He looked calm and did not return the greeting. He went straight into the main hall. Pu Yuantu followed him into the main hall. He sighed. Junior brother Wu, you're too impulsive. You don't know how worried we were. Fortunately, you came back safely. Chu Li said. They couldn't wait for me to not come back. You're going to disappoint everyone, Pu Yuantu hurriedly said. Chu Li waved his hand. Forget it. It's boring talk about this. I'll stay here for a night and return to the sect. Chapter 2064. He got up and left in a hurry. Chu Li stood up and walked with his hands behind his back. He looked around the hall and the courtyard. He did not feel nervous about entering the heavenly demonic realm, only indifference. After a while, Pu Yuantu returned and smiled. Junior brother Wu, follow me. Chu Li followed him out of the hall and turned to the moon gate. They passed through a courtyard and arrived at another small courtyard. It was exquisite and elegant, with a style that was completely different from the surrounding buildings. Junior brother Wu, you've stayed in the Grandmaster's realm for a long time. You should have adapted to their style. Are you used to living here? Pu Yuantu smiled. Chu Li nodded. I'm fine. The style here was similar to the Grandmaster's realm. Pu Yuantu brought him into the courtyard and looked around the living room and bedroom before sitting down at the stone table in the courtyard. Soon, a maid came to serve tea and a few plates of snacks. Pu Yuantu looked at Chu Li carefully. Junior brother Wu, how was your year in the Grandmaster's realm? No. Chu Li shook his head. You didn't find Master's senior Lung's murderer? Pu Yuantu asked. Chu Li nodded. I found him. Did you kill him? Pu Yuantu asked. Chu Li answered, yes. He already knew Wu Yuanxi's purpose. He entered the Grandmaster's realm for revenge. His master died in the foreign battlefield, so he entered the Grandmaster's realm to avenge his master. He finally found the murderer through a secret technique. After killing the murderer, he disguised himself as the middle-aged man. Pu Yuantu smiled. That was very successful. Chu Li scoffed. I didn't just want to avenge my master. I also wanted to steal the Grandmaster's great light surpassing realm martial arts. Unfortunately, I failed. Why did you fail? Pu Yuantu asked. Were you discovered? Chu Li said, I worked with a disciple from the butterfly sect and was discovered by the great light surpassing realm. I didn't manage to bring out the second volume of the Great Light Scripture. The Grandmaster's realm is not to be underestimated. Sigh, what a pity. Pu Yuantu shook his head. If I could obtain the second volume of the Great Light Scripture, it would be a great merit. I could even obtain the Flying Devil technique. Chu Li nodded slowly. Pu Yuantu kept shaking his head and sighing. He felt sorry for Chu Li. Chu Li said, I'll try again if I have the chance in the future. It's a pity for that disciple of the dancing butterfly sect. It's better not to go to the beyond heaven's realm. Pu Yuantu said, it's no different from a dragon's lair and a tiger's den. There are very few who can return safely. You're already very lucky to be able to return safely. Chu Li remained silent. Pu Yuantu knew at a glance that Huang Xiaolong wouldn't listen to him. He shook his head helplessly and said, Junior brother Huang entered the Templar court and became a divine demon guard while you were away. If you were here, he wouldn't have a chance. Chu Li read Pu Yuantu's mind and said, Junior brother Huang has grown up. Junior brother Huang's name was Huang Hemming, and he was one of the rising stars of the Flying Heaven sect. Originally, he had been suppressed by Wu Yuanxi, but as soon as Wu Yuanxi left, he had risen up to join the Sage Hall. The Saint Hall of the Flying Heaven sect was made up of the most elite disciples. The disciples of the Saint Hall were known as the demonic god guards. They were the guards of the soaring demonic god and could cultivate the soaring demonic god art, the strongest martial art of the Flying Heaven sect. The Saint Hall opens its doors once every 5 years to recruit disciples. The whole sect will compete in martial arts, and the first place will be able to enter the Saint Hall. You'll have to wait 5 years for the next time, Pu Yuantu said regretfully. In terms of martial arts cultivation, how can he compare to you? Chu Li asked, what else is there? Pu Yuantu said, The other thing is the collaboration with the Asuras. Chu frowned. Why are you collaborating with them? There's nothing we can do. How can we go against the sect leader's decision? Pu Yuan shook his head and sighed. The sect leader is wise and powerful. There must be a need for us to collaborate, or else these people wouldn't be qualified to join our sect. Asuras, huh? Chu looked disdainful. Pu Yuan said, Junior Brother Wu, please don't act like this in front of the Asuras. Don't get into conflict with them. A while ago, Senior Brother Liu was punished to face the wall for 10 years because he beat up 10 Asuras. Chu frowned. It seems like the sect leader has ulterior motives. The sect leader must have taken a liking to them. We just need to obey his orders, Pu Yuan said. There are Asuras in Distant Wind City. No one will be rude to them. Chu said, I'll go back and see the sect leader tomorrow. The sect leader is an isolated cultivation. Junior Brother Wu won't be able to see him. Pu Yuan too shook his head. Chu frowned. Where's Elder Liu? Elder Liu is here. Pu Yuan smiled and nodded. All right then. Junior Brother Wu, you can rest first. If you need anything, just let the maids know. Chu Fizz saluted. After Pu Yuan left, Chu paced around the courtyard with his hands behind his back. He thought about what he had learned and tried to recall if he had any flaws. He was very relaxed after entering Distant Wind City. He was not worried that he would be seen through. The heavenly demonic realm was not guarded against celestials. Those who did not cultivate the heavenly demonic power could not hide from the city guards, let alone the city gates of Distant Wind City. The two city gates were made of a strange material. Those who did not cultivate the heavenly demonic power would light up as soon as they approached. Once celestials cultivated the demonic power, they would become heavenly demons. There was no possibility of them returning, so there was no need to guard against them. Chuli's purpose in coming to the heavenly demonic realm this time was to find out the real situation and find the weakness of heavenly demons. Only by knowing oneself and one's enemy could one win. The Grandmaster knew nothing about heavenly demons, but heavenly demons had a deep understanding of the Grandmaster. It would be best if he could take this opportunity to destroy the alliance with Asura. However, he could not act too hastily. He needed to find the knot between Asura and heavenly demons and destroy it easily. He could not act rashly and use shallow methods like framing others. The sect that Wu Yuanci belonged to was the Flying Heaven sect. It was one of the top sects in the heavenly demonic realm and belonged to the 12 symbols. After dinner, he left the Flying Heaven courtyard and strolled on the street. The brightly lit street was even more bustling than it was during the day. It was bustling with people coming and going. He weaved through the crowd like a fish and arrived in front of two Asuras. These two Asuras were young men. They looked ordinary but had cold and stern expressions. They had an aura that kept people away from them. They walked through the crowd with ease and carefully observed their surroundings, not letting go of a single spot. Chu knew at a glance that they were responsible for observation and could be considered as his eyes and ears. The cultivation level of these two Asuras was not too high. They were not great Asuras. However, judging from their expressions, they were not ordinary Asuras. They must be of high status and possessed extraordinary abilities. Chu stared at them carefully and used his divine sense to observe them. He immediately understood that both of them had photographic memory. After they returned, they would be able to clearly draw out what they saw through pictures. Chu sighed. The Asura realm was not to be underestimated. It was a complete world with geniuses. He left after observing them for a while. He did not make a move. The next morning, he left Distant Wind City and continued eastward. He wanted to go to Flying Heaven City, where the Flying Heaven sect was located. He stepped on the heavenly demon bracelet and traveled quickly. He traveled in the morning and stayed at night while observing the local customs and practices in the heavenly demonic realm. In the eyes of Devis, heavenly demons were ever-changing and unpredictable. They were hard to guard against. Therefore, they were quick to kill when they saw them. Otherwise, they would be silently killed by heavenly demons. However, the heavenly demons he met were not like that. Instead, they were simple and frank. They did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Chapter 2065. The Flying Heaven faction was situated on a towering mountain peak. When he arrived at the foot of the mountain, two young men in black clothes floated out. Their feet seemed to be riding the wind as they floated without any resistance. They appeared in front of him without a sound. Chu frowned as he glanced at them and nodded. Junior brother Zheng, junior brother Long. The two young men smiled. Both of them were fair and handsome, and they looked friendly. They fist saluted and smiled. Senior brother Wu, you're finally back. Did anything big happen in the mountain while I was away? Chu asked. The taller young man shook his head. Who dares to provoke the Flying Heaven sect? But senior brother Wu, you came back a little late and missed the opening of the sanctuary. Chu nodded. It's fine, I'll wait for the next time. But the two hesitated and shook their heads helplessly. If they missed it once, they would be delayed by 5 years. For those who cultivated the flying demon technique, missing 5 years was equivalent to falling behind by 5 years. They might not be able to catch up in their lifetime. Huang Heming was originally not as good as Wu Yuanci, but because Wu Yuanci went to the Outland to avenge his master, he entered the sanctuary first. As a result, Wu Yuanci fell behind by a huge step. He might not be able to catch up in the future and was always at a disadvantage. When they thought about it, they felt that it was unfair for Wu Yuanci. Not only did he not get repaid for his kindness, but he was also implicated, causing him to be unable to hold his head high. It was really frustrating, but they could not do anything about it. They could not stop Huang Heming from entering the sanctuary. Chu waved his hand. Is there anything else? It's about the Azuras. The taller young man scoffed. A few Azuras came to our sect and were so arrogant. It's so infuriating. If it were me, I'd teach them a lesson too. Chu nodded. The Azuras are important. Let's not mess around. All right, you guys stay on duty. I'll go back. Farewell, senior brother Wu. The two fists saluted respectfully. Chu sighed inwardly. This Wu Yuanci was quite popular, and he had a high prestige. His disciples trusted him, especially when he went to the Outland to avenge his master, which made him even more admirable. Chu waved his hand and entered the mountain. He felt an invisible force pressing against him. This invisible energy was as hot oil, as if it was going to fry him. He hurriedly activated the heavenly demonic power, causing the heavenly demonic orb to appear. Then he activated the acquired demonic spirit devouring technique and instantly devoured this energy. His body felt light, but he didn't stop. After taking a step forward, his body felt light, and the force disappeared without a trace. Chu heaved a sigh of relief. This was the most important stage. If he did not have the heavenly demonic power, he would not be able to enter at all. The invisible force from before was a formation that could identify whether or not he was a heavenly demon. His heart stirred slightly. If he could get a glimpse of this formation and set it up in every sect or city, he would be able to distinguish and fend off sky fiends. Thinking of this, he was overjoyed. He did not expect to receive such good news as soon as he entered the Flying Heaven sect. No matter what, he had to get his hands on this formation. However, he could also imagine how difficult it would be. As a sect guarding formation, it was definitely a top secret. The only person who knew about it was the sect leader. No one else could get their hands on it, lest the secret was leaked. If it really did not work, he would first become the sect leader. If he could really become the sect leader of the Flying Heaven sect, it would have a significant impact on the entire heavenly demonic realm. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel his blood boil, and he was full of energy. The wide stone steps went up, twisting and turning, all the way up to the clouds. He walked along this wide but weathered white stone path. From time to time, there would be buildings on the side of the path, and he would bump into Flying Heaven sect disciples. The Flying Heaven sect was a large sect in the heavenly demonic realm with more than 10,000 members. From time to time, he would bump into disciples who recognized him, and they would all fist salute him. Chu calmly returned the greeting, revealing a bit of arrogance. Everyone was used to it. This was his habit, and he had always been like this. If you were too friendly, it would make them suspicious. Senior brother Wu, Senior Brother Wu. Junior Brother Wu. Chu Li's expression was indifferent. He lightly fist saluted as a greeting, and his feet fluttered up the steps. His footsteps suddenly slowed down, and he saw a young man who was walking down. This young man had a strong physique, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. He looked like a simple and strong farmer's son, but his surging aura indicated that he was a top-notch master. He fist saluted Chu Li solemnly. Senior Brother Wu. Chu Li stopped. He had seen this figure in Pu Yuantu's mind before. It was Huang Hemming. Chu Li fist saluted and said calmly, Junior Brother Huang, congratulations. Huang Hemming fist saluted and said seriously, I took advantage of you, Senior Brother. Chu Li smiled faintly and said indifferently, that's your ability. Even if you don't enter the Templar Hall, someone else will. It doesn't matter if it's you or not. You don't have to feel guilty. Thank you, Senior Brother. Huang Hemming fist saluted. Chu Li waved his hand and went straight up, passing by him without stopping, as if he was just an insignificant person. Huang Hemming said in a low voice, Senior Brother Wu, I'd like to learn a thing or two from you. Chu Li stopped and turned to look at him. Huang Hemming said, I've already cultivated the flying divine demon technique. I'd like to see if I can defeat Senior Brother Wu. Chu Li said, I haven't stopped cultivating in the Grandmaster's boundary, and I've had quite a few fortuitous encounters. You're no match for me. Why do you ask for trouble? I'll see after I try. Huang Hemming said stubbornly. Chu Li stared at him and shook his head. Do you really want to defeat me that badly? Yes, Huang Hemming said. All right, I'll fulfill your wish. Chu Li glanced at the martial arts field not far away. It was hidden by the surrounding forest, and outsiders could not see it, but could not hide from his omniscient mirror. In the eyes of others, it was because he was familiar with the Flying Heavens sect, which was why he knew about the martial arts field. The two of them glided to the martial arts field next to it. The eyes of a few people who passed by instantly lit up, and soon, some of them ran to greet their friends, wanting to watch the show. The battle between the youth champion, Wu Yuanci, and the current champion, Huang Hemming, would definitely be exciting. When Chu Li and Huang Hemming arrived at the martial arts field, there were more than 10 people training. When they saw them, they quickly fist saluted and retreated to the side to watch the show. Only the two of them stood in the middle of the huge field. The martial arts field was about the size of half a football field, wide and flat, and the ground was paved with red soil, which was soaked in water but not muddy. Chu Li looked at Huang Hemming and slowly raised his hand. Junior Brother Huang, please, please, Huang Hemming shouted, and his figure flashed into the air, as if he had taken a step forward. His 10 fingers were like claws, and he was like an eagle preying on its prey, moving forward with an indomitable and imposing manner. Chu Li lightly struck out with his palm. Bang! His right palm collided with Huang Hemming's right palm, and a dull explosion was heard. Huang Hemming pounced forward, but his expression changed slightly. The strength of Chu Li's palm was extremely strange. Not only did it not absorb any force, but it also had a suction force, causing him to involuntarily fall forward. He knew that things were not going well, so he quickly pounced forward at an even faster speed, and his other hand was already behind him to meet Chu Li's attack. Bang! Suddenly, there was a flash in front of him, and Chu Li suddenly appeared, then hit his chest with his palm. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.